Have you ever stopped to think about this little book you carry when you travel? Your passport. It feels so modern, so essential to our idea of international travel. But what if I told you that the concept of a travel document is centuries, even millennia, old? The story of the passport isn't just about bureaucracy. It's a fascinating tale of power, identity, and humanity's unending desire to explore. Let's rewind the clock. Way back, I'm talking about ancient times. Even before we had nations as we know them today, people needed permission to move through territories that weren't their own. One of the earliest mentions comes from the Hebrew Bible in the book of Nehemiah. Around 450 BC, Nehemiah, an official serving King Artaxerxes of Persia, wanted to travel to Judea. The king granted him a letter to the governors beyond the river, essentially requesting safe passage for him through their lands. This was one of the first recorded safe conduct documents, a proto-passport. It wasn't about citizenship, but about a powerful ruler vouching for one of his subjects. It was a letter that said, "He's with me. Let him pass." This idea of a personal letter of recommendation from a sovereign ruler continued for centuries. In medieval Europe, the world was a patchwork of kingdoms, city-states, and feudal territories. Travel was dangerous. Bandits, rival lords, and general lawlessness were common. If you were a merchant, a messenger, or a pilgrim, you couldn't just wander from one place to another. You needed protection. This is where letters of safe conduct became crucial. Kings and powerful nobles would issue these documents to grant travelers protection within their domains. It was a written promise that the bearer was under the king's protection, and that harming them would be like harming the king himself. This was a serious deterrent. But it wasn't just about protecting the traveler. It was also about controlling who came in and out. For example, during the reign of King Henry V of England in the early 10th century, an act of parliament was passed that made it mandatory for English subjects traveling abroad to obtain such a document. This was one of the earliest instances of a government formally regulating its citizens' travel. The term passport itself likely originates from this era. It's believed to be a compound of the French words passer, meaning to pass, and port, referring to a seaport or city gate. So, a passport was literally a document to pass through the port. These early passports were not standardized books like we have today. They were single sheets of parchment, often large and ornate, bearing the royal seal. They would describe the bearer's appearance, height, hair color, any distinguishing marks because, of course, there were no photographs. These documents weren't just for the elite. While royal envoys and nobles certainly used them, they were also vital for the lifeblood of the medieval economy, merchants. Imagine you're a wool merchant from Florence trying to get your goods to a trade fair in Flanders. You'd have to cross dozens of small territories, each with its own ruler and its own set of tolls and taxes. A safe conduct from a powerful figure like the Pope or the Holy Roman Emperor could make that journey possible and profitable. It was a VIP pass for the medieval world. Similarly, pilgrims traveling to holy sites like Jerusalem, Rome, or Santiago de Compostela would seek these letters to ensure their spiritual journey was uncut short by a highwayman's sword. In the Islamic world, a similar system existed. During the Caliphate, a receipt for having paid the zakat or jizya taxes, the religious taxes for Muslims, and non-Muslims, respectively, often served as a basic travel permit. It proved you were in good standing with the authorities and were free to travel within the Caliphate's vast territories. This system facilitated incredible mobility for scholars, traders, and pilgrims across North Africa, the Middle East, and into Asia. It helped create a connected world of ideas and commerce. So these early documents, whether you call them safe conducts, letters of passage, or early passports, all served a dual purpose. On one hand, they enabled movement. They gave individuals the freedom and security to explore, to trade, and to connect with distant cultures. They were a tool of facilitation, a blessing from a ruler that opened up the world. On the other hand, they were an instrument of control. They defined who was allowed to move and who wasn't. They were a way for states and rulers to monitor their borders, collect revenue, and keep tabs on who was coming and going. This fundamental tension between freedom and control is a thread that runs through the entire history of the passport, right up to the present day. These medieval parchments were the first step in a long journey toward the small, powerful booklet that unlocks the world for us today. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this journey into the past interesting, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the history of everyday things. We'll see you in the next. Have you ever held your passport and wondered about its story? Not just your story, but the story of the document itself. Today we think of it as a key to international travel, a little book filled with stamps and memories. But long before biometric chips and official government crests, the concept of a travel document was already shaping the world, not for tourists, but for traders. Let's rewind the clock, centuries before the first modern passport. Imagine a world of sprawling empires, vast deserts, and unpredictable seas. For a merchant, a journey from Venice to Constantinople, or along the Silk Road to the heart of Asia, wasn't just long, it was perilous. You weren't just carrying valuable goods like spices, silks, or salt. You were a stranger in a strange land. Every city gate, every checkpoint, every port was a potential point of conflict. How could you prove you weren't a spy, a thief, or an enemy? This is where the earliest ancestors of the passport come into play: merchant credentials. These weren't standardized booklets. They were often single sheets of parchment, letters of passage, or safe conduct papers. Think of them as a letter of recommendation from a powerful figure. A king, a sultan, a powerful guild, or a city magistrate would issue a document vouching for the bearer. This piece of paper would essentially say, "This is Marco, a merchant from our city. He comes in peace to trade. Grant him safe passage, offer him aid, and let him conduct his business without hindrance. By helping him, you honor us." It was a formal declaration of identity and purpose, backed by the authority of the issuer. For the merchant, this paper was a lifeline. It could mean the difference between being welcomed into a city and being thrown in a dungeon. These documents weren't just about safety. They were about building trust. In a world without global banking or instant communication, trust was the most valuable currency. A merchant's pass was a node in a vast invisible network. When a guard in a dusty caravan city saw a seal he recognized, or a signature from a respected leader, it connected him to a system of reciprocal obligation. Honoring this pass meant that his own city's merchants would be treated well when they traveled. It was the foundation of international relations, built one merchant at a time. These letters often contained a physical description of the bearer, a man of medium height, with a dark beard and a scar above his left eye. It sounds basic, but this was a crucial security feature, an early form of biometric identification, ensuring the document wasn't stolen and used by someone else. It tied the document to a specific identifiable person. Consider the powerful merchant guilds, like the Hanseatic League in Northern Europe. Their members traveled with papers that were recognized across dozens of cities. This shared system of credentials created a kind of free trade zone, smoothing the way for commerce and creating immense wealth. The pass was a symbol of belonging to a powerful club, one that offered protection and privilege far from home. As sea travel became more common, these documents evolved. Sea letters or ships' passports became essential. These papers identified the vessel, its captain, its crew, and its cargo. They certified that the ship was not a pirate vessel but a legitimate commercial enterprise. When a ship sailed into a foreign port, the harbor master would demand to see these papers. They were the key to being allowed to dock, unload goods, and trade. Without them, a ship could be impounded, its cargo seized, and its crew imprisoned. These early merchant credentials did more than just enable trade. They were instrumental in the spread of ideas, technologies, and cultures. The merchant who carried a pass from Persia to China wasn't just bringing silk. He was bringing news, stories, and knowledge. The document that allowed him to pass through a dozen different cultures was also the vehicle for cultural exchange. These networks of trust, built on pieces of paper and wax seals, literally connected the world. So, as these systems became more sophisticated, different rulers and states began to see the power in controlling movement. The idea of a centralized authority issuing travel documents started to take shape. Instead of just a guild or a city, A king or an emperor would claim the sole right to grant safe passage through his lands. This was a major step towards the national passports we know today. The document was no longer just about safe trade. It was becoming a tool of statecraft and a symbol of a person's allegiance to a particular sovereign. It is fascinating to think that the passport in your drawer has its roots not in tourism or leisure, but in the gritty, high-stakes world of ancient and medieval commerce. It was born from the need to prove you were who you said you were, to build trust where there was none, and to navigate a world that was both wondrous and dangerous. The story of the passport is the story of how we learn to move across the globe, not as strangers but as recognized individuals engaged in the fundamental human act of connection and exchange. Next time you look at your passport, remember those early merchants and their simple letters of passage. They were the pioneers, the ones who first used a piece of paper to shrink the world and build the global networks we now take for granted. Their journeys laid the foundation for the very idea of a global citizen. Thank you so much for joining me on this historical journey. If you found this interesting, please give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the hidden histories of everyday things. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our deep dive into the history of the passport. Today we're journeying back in time, long before the age of nation-states and border controls as we know them. We're exploring a world where travel was driven not by business or tourism, but by faith. This is the story of pilgrims and their papers. Imagine Europe in the Middle Ages. The concept of a passport didn't exist, but the need for safe passage was very real. If you were a devout Christian, your life's ambition might be to visit a sacred site like Rome, Jerusalem, or the shrine of St. James in Santiago de Compostela. These weren't just trips. They were epic, often perilous journeys that could take months, even years. So, how did you prove you were a genuine pilgrim and not a vagabond or someone with ill intentions? You needed documents, but these weren't issued by kings or governments. Instead, they came from the church. Before setting off, a pilgrim would often obtain a letter of recommendation from their local priest or bishop. This letter was like a spiritual seal of approval. It testified to their good character and their sincere religious purpose. It was their ticket to safety and hospitality along the way. Think of it as an early form of a visa, but instead of being stamped by an embassy, it was blessed by the clergy. This document would ask fellow Christians, from humble innkeepers to powerful lords, to provide the bearer with food, shelter, and protection. In a fragmented and often dangerous world, this piece of paper was a lifeline. It transformed a stranger into a brother or sister in faith worthy of aid. As pilgrims traveled along these established routes, they would encounter a network of monasteries, hospices, and religious houses. These institutions were the service stations of the medieval world, specifically set up to cater to travelers on a holy quest. Upon arrival, a pilgrim would present their letter. This not only granted them entry, but also often meant they received a bed for the night and a warm meal, free of charge. It was a system built entirely on shared belief and trust, facilitated by a simple document. But the paperwork didn't stop there. Upon reaching their sacred destination, pilgrims often received another document, a testament to their achievement. This was a certificate of pilgrimage, known in Latin as a testimonium. For those who walked the Camino de Compostela, this certificate was, and still is, called the Compostela. To earn this, pilgrims had to prove they had completed the journey. They collected stamps or seals in a special booklet, called a credential, at various churches and inns along the way. It was a medieval loyalty card, a tangible record of their long and arduous trek. Once they arrived at the shrine and presented their fully stamped credential, the cathedral authorities would issue the official certificate. This certificate was incredibly precious. It wasn't just a souvenir. It was proof of their devotion and penance. Pilgrims would carry it home and display it with immense pride. It could grant them spiritual benefits, like the remission of sins. In some cases, it even had practical advantages. If a pilgrim had taken a vow to complete the journey, this certificate was the proof that they had fulfilled their sacred promise. It was their spiritual passport, stamped at the gates of a holy city. What's fascinating is how these early practices mirror our modern systems. The letter of recommendation from a local priest is an ancestor of the visa application, vouching for the traveler's purpose. The credential with its collection of stamps is a precursor to the passport stamps we collect today, each one marking a stage of our journey. And the final certificate? That's the ultimate proof of arrival, the validation of the entire enterprise. These pilgrimage documents also played a crucial role in creating a sense of shared European identity. A pilgrim from England with their letter from a local bishop could travel through France, across the Alps into Italy, and find a network of support waiting for them. Their identity as a pilgrim transcended their local or regional origin. The documents they carried were keys that unlocked a continent-wide community of faith. They showed that you were part of something bigger, a traveler on a universally understood mission. This system wasn't foolproof, of course. Forgeries were a problem, with less than pious individuals using fake letters to get free lodging. But the very existence of these forgeries proves how valuable the genuine documents were. They were a currency of trust in a world that desperately needed it. So the next time you get your passport stamped at an airport, take a moment to think of those medieval pilgrims. Their simple papers, issued by churches and shrines, were the first steps toward the complex system of international travel we have today. They weren't just about crossing borders. They were about affirming identity, ensuring safety, and connecting people across vast distances through the power of a shared purpose. These ancient documents remind us that the human need to travel, to explore, and to seek meaning is a story as old as time itself. Thanks so much for joining me on this historical journey. If you found this fascinating, please hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter in the history of the passport. Have you ever wondered what the world was like before passports? Before you could just flash a little book and cross a border? For most of human history, travel was a wild and unpredictable affair. But even centuries ago, a special class of traveler needed a way to move safely and be recognized: the diplomat. This is the story of their special papers, the ancestors of the modern passport. Imagine you're a king in the 5th-10th century. You need to send a crucial message to a neighboring kingdom, maybe to propose a marriage, declare war, or negotiate a trade deal. You can't just send any old messenger. What if they're captured? What if the message is stolen or altered? Your entire kingdom could be at risk. You need someone who can travel with authority and protection. This is where the earliest forms of diplomatic documents come in. These weren't little booklets like we have today. They were often large, ornate scrolls of parchment, stamped with the king's own seal in wax. This seal was everything. It was like a medieval fingerprint, a unique and verifiable mark of authenticity that said, "This person speaks for me, the king. Harm them, and you harm me." These documents had a specific name: letters of credence. They basically credited the bearer as a legitimate envoy. They would formally introduce the messenger to the foreign court, stating their name and purpose. But they did more than just introduce. They requested safe passage. The document would often include a plea, or sometimes a thinly veiled threat, asking all lords, soldiers, and officials along the way to grant the courier safe conduct. This concept was known as safe passage or lettre de passage. Think of it as a VIP pass for the medieval world. While a common traveler might be stopped, questioned, robbed, or even imprisoned, a courier with a royal letter was, in theory, untouchable. Harming a royal envoy was a grave insult, an act that could easily spark a war. These papers were a shield, a symbol of the power of the monarch who sent them. They essentially created a bubble of diplomatic immunity around the person carrying them. One of the most famous examples comes from England. King Henry V issued what some consider one of the earliest passport-like documents. These weren't for everyone, of course. They were granted to his subjects, but especially to his diplomats and agents, to help them travel safely on the continent, particularly in France during the 100 Years' War. The document would identify the bearer and ask foreign powers to grant them safe passage and assistance. It was a formal request from one sovereign to another. These documents weren't just about protecting the person. They were about protecting the message. Often, The letters themselves were carried in locked pouches or special containers. The diplomatic courier was sworn to secrecy and was expected to protect the message with their life. The credentials they carried ensured that when they arrived, the receiving court would know the message was genuine and hadn't been tampered with. It was the foundation of international trust. The language used in these early diplomatic notes was incredibly formal and polite. Even when the relationship between the kingdoms was tense, it was all part of the game of diplomacy. The notes would be filled with honorifics and elaborate titles, addressing the foreign monarch with the utmost respect. For example, a letter might begin, "To our most esteemed and noble cousin, the king of this country. We send greetings and offer this, our trusted servant, ... It was a delicate dance of words, where every phrase was carefully chosen to convey respect while asserting the sender's own power. This system wasn't foolproof, of course. A determined enemy might still intercept a courier. A local lord in a remote region might not recognize or respect a foreign king's seal, but for the most part it worked. It created a network of recognized messengers who could stitch the political fabric of Europe together. These couriers were the original information superhighway, carrying intelligence, proposals, and declarations that shaped the destinies of nations. As the centuries passed and bureaucracies grew more complex, these individual letters of credence began to evolve. Instead of a unique scroll for every journey, more standardized forms started to appear. The concept of identifying a citizen for travel began to slowly trickle down from the elite world of diplomacy to the general public. These early diplomatic notes, born from the need to protect royal messengers and their secret messages, laid the crucial groundwork. They established a fundamental principle of a passport, a document issued by a state authority that identifies an individual and requests their safe passage in foreign lands. So, next time you flip through the pages of your passport, take a moment to think about its long and noble history. It didn't start as a tool for tourism. It began as a wax-sealed declaration, a royal command that allowed brave messengers to cross hostile lands, carrying the fate of kingdoms in their hands. It's a direct descendant of the papers that protected spies, arranged royal weddings, and prevented wars. From a king's plea for a safe passage to the biometric chip in your pocket, the journey of this small but mighty document is truly the story of how our world became connected. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this journey into the past interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the hidden history of everyday things. We'd love to have you join our community. See you in the next video. Have you ever wondered how a tiny booklet became the key to crossing borders? The story of the passport is a story of power, control, and the very definition of who we are. Let's rewind the clock to the 19th and early 20th centuries, the age of empire, to see how our modern passports were truly forged. Back then, sprawling empires like the British, French, and Spanish ruled over vast territories across the globe. Managing these colossal domains was a massive challenge. They needed a way to keep track of everyone moving around, from colonial administrators and soldiers to merchants, missionaries, and settlers. The solution? Standardized travel documents. Before this era, travel papers were a chaotic mix of local letters of safe conduct and personal introductions. But as empires expanded, they needed a more systematic approach. A British subject traveling from London to India, for example, couldn't just rely on a letter from their local lord anymore. They needed a document recognized by every official along the way, from the port of Suez to the streets of Calcutta. This led to the rise of the imperial passport. These weren't just for travel. They were powerful symbols of belonging. Holding a British passport, for instance, meant you were a subject of the crown. It granted you certain protections, rights, and access that were denied to others. It was a declaration of status that opened doors across a quarter of the globe. Think about it. An administrator heading to a colonial outpost in Africa, a merchant sailing to the Caribbean, or a family emigrating to Australia. Their passport was their official identity card, their ticket to a new life, and a constant reminder of their connection to the imperial center. It created a clear distinction between the insiders, the citizens and subjects of the empire, and the outsiders. These documents also served the crucial function of control. Colonial administrations used them to monitor the movement of populations, both European and local. They could restrict travel for those deemed troublesome and facilitate it for those considered beneficial to the empire's interests. For the millions of people living under colonial rule, these papers often became a tool of subjugation, defining their limited rights and restricting their mobility within their own lands. The passport wasn't just a facilitator of movement. It was a gatekeeper. Interestingly, this standardization laid the groundwork for the international passport system we know today. After World War I, as empires began to crumble and new nations emerged, the need for a globally recognized travel document became urgent. The League of Nations picked up where the empires left off, convening in 1920 to create the first international standards for passports. They took the model of the imperial passport, a booklet with a photo, personal details, and a statement of nationality, and adapted it for a world of nation-states. So the next time you flip through your passport, remember its complex history. This small document is a direct descendant of the papers that enabled the massive movements of people during the Age of Empire. It's a legacy of exploration and migration, but also of power and control. It tells a story of how empires organized the world and, in doing so, shaped the very concept of our national identity. What we see as a simple tool for tourism was once an instrument that built and maintained global empires. It's a powerful reminder that even the most ordinary objects can have extraordinary histories. Thanks so much for joining me on this historical journey. If you found this interesting, please hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories behind everyday things and ring the bell so you don't miss our next video. See you next time. Hello, history lovers, and welcome back to our journey through time. Today, we're diving deep into a seemingly simple booklet that holds immense power, the passport. We've explored its ancient origins, but now we arrive at a pivotal era that transformed it forever, the Age of Empire. How did this humble travel document become a cornerstone of global power and control? Let's find out. As the 18th and 19th centuries dawned, great European empires like Britain, France, Spain, and Portugal were expanding their reach across the globe. This wasn't just about conquering land. It was about managing vast, diverse populations scattered across continents. And to manage them, they needed to know who was who and who was going where. This is where the passport truly came into its own. Think about it. An empire needed to move people with precision. Colonial administrators and officials had to travel from the home country to distant outposts in Africa, India, or the Americas. Soldiers needed to be deployed. Merchants and settlers were encouraged to venture into new territories to exploit resources and establish communities. All of these movements required a system of identification and authorization. The passport became that system. For an official heading to a colonial post, a passport was more than just permission to travel. It was a symbol of their authority, a document that verified their connection to the imperial crown. It granted them passage, protection, and privilege in lands that were often hostile or unfamiliar. It declared, "I am an agent of the empire, and I belong here." This standardization was crucial for maintaining a cohesive administrative network across thousands of miles. But passports weren't just for the ruling class. They were also used to manage the subjects of the empire. For a British subject in India, for example, a passport could facilitate travel within the empire's vast territories. It was a tool that defined them as part of this sprawling political entity. However, this also created a clear hierarchy. The design and language of these imperial passports reflected this power dynamic. They were often issued in the name of a monarch, a king or queen, and written in the language of the colonizer. This instantly established who was in charge. The documents began to include more detailed personal information: name, age, physical descriptions, and eventually photographs. This wasn't just for security. It was a way of cataloging and controlling populations. This system created a powerful distinction between subject and foreigner. If you held a British passport, you were afforded certain rights and protections under British law, even if you were halfway around the world. If you didn't, you were an outsider. This became particularly important in controlling migration. As empires expanded, they needed labor. This led to massive movements of people, both voluntary and forced. Indentured laborers from India were sent to work on plantations in the Caribbean and Africa. Chinese workers were brought to build railways in North America. Passports and other travel papers were instrumental in managing these flows. They could restrict movement, tie a worker to a specific location or employer, and ensure that the labor force was directed exactly where the imperial economy needed it. So the passport became a dual-purpose tool. For the colonizers, it was a key to the world, a symbol of power and mobility. For many of the colonized, it could be a chain, a document that limited their freedom and defined their status as subjects rather than full citizens. It was an instrument that helped build and maintain the very structure of empire. Furthermore, as rival empires competed for territory and influence, passports became a matter of national security. During times of war or political tension, knowing the nationality of a traveler was paramount. A passport could distinguish a friendly ally from a potential enemy spy. Ports and border crossings became more formalized, with officials meticulously checking papers. The passport was no longer a mere letter of safe conduct. It was a sophisticated tool of statecraft and surveillance. This era cemented the link between a person's identity and their nationality, a concept that feels so natural to us today. Your passport declared not just who you were, but what asterisk you were, British, French, Spanish. It tied your individual existence to the fate and fortunes of a massive, globe-spanning empire. The legacy of this period is still with us. The idea that a state has the right to control who crosses its borders, the detailed information we provide, and the very design of our modern passports all have deep roots in the age of empire. It was a time when a small paper booklet became a powerful mechanism for building nations, managing populations, and projecting power across the world. Thanks so much for joining me on this exploration. The history of the passport is truly the history of our modern world. If you found this fascinating, please give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next chapter. We'd love to have you with us. Ever wonder how a simple little booklet became your golden ticket to see the world? Today, we're journeying back in time to uncover the surprising and fascinating history of the passport, exploring how this small document unlocked global migration, epic exploration, and even shaped the very idea of who we are. Before the 19th century, international travel was a chaotic affair. Imagine trying to cross a border with just a letter of introduction from a local official, or maybe a handwritten note from a nobleman. These early documents, often called safe conducts, were inconsistent and unreliable. They were less about proving who you were and more about begging for safe passage through potentially hostile territories. For most people, the idea of traveling beyond their own village was simply a fantasy. Then everything changed. The 19th century roared in, bringing with it the Industrial Revolution. Suddenly, the world was shrinking. The real game changer? Steam power. The invention of the steamship and the expansion of railway networks created a revolution in movement. Journeys that once took months of perilous sailing could now be completed in weeks, with a level of safety and reliability never seen before. Think about it. Majestic steamships billowing smoke as they sliced through the Atlantic. Intricate networks of iron rails crisscrossing continents, connecting bustling cities to distant frontiers. This wasn't just travel. It was a new era of human mobility. For the first time in history, mass migration became a reality. Millions of people, driven by hope, ambition, or the need to escape hardship, could now dream of starting a new life on a different continent. This explosion in movement created a brand new problem. With thousands of people arriving at ports and borders every day, how could countries keep track of who was coming and going? The old system of handwritten notes was completely overwhelmed. Governments needed a standardized, reliable, and efficient way to identify travelers and migrants. The demand for consistent documentation skyrocketed. This need gave birth to the modern passport as we start to recognize it. Countries began issuing more formal printed documents. While they still varied greatly from place to place, they shared a common purpose: to provide a verifiable identity for the holder. These early passports often included a physical description, details like height, hair color, eye color, and any distinguishing marks. It was a pre-photography attempt to link a person to their papers. Interestingly, during this golden age of travel, for many routes, passports weren't even mandatory. In places like the United States and across much of Europe, borders were surprisingly open. You could often just get off a ship and walk right in. Passports were more of a helpful tool for proving your identity and citizenship, especially if you ran into trouble or needed assistance from your country's consulate abroad. They were a safety net, not a barrier. The real turning point came with the outbreak of World War I, the freedom of movement that had defined the late 19th and early 20th centuries came to a screeching halt. Suddenly, nations became deeply suspicious of foreigners. Borders, once porous, were sealed shut. Security became the #1 priority, and controlling who crossed those borders was paramount. This is when the passport transformed from a convenient travel document into a mandatory tool of state security. Countries began requiring all travelers, citizens, and foreigners alike to carry a passport. In 1920, the League of Nations held a conference specifically on passports, establishing guidelines for a standardized booklet format that is still recognizable today. The inclusion of a photograph became a requirement, cementing the passport's role as the ultimate proof of identity. From that point on, the passport story is one of increasing sophistication. We saw the introduction of machine-readable passports in the 1980s, which sped up processing at airports. Then came the biometric or e-passports in the early 2000s, embedding a microchip that stores your data, including a digital image of your face and even your fingerprints, making them incredibly difficult to forge. So the next time you hold your passport, take a moment to appreciate the incredible history packed into that little book. It's more than just a travel document. It's a symbol of a world transformed by steam and steel, a relic of an era of unprecedented freedom, and a testament to how our ideas of identity, security, and belonging have evolved over time. From a simple letter of safe conduct to a high-tech biometric key, the passport tells the story of our journey to a connected, globalized world. Thank you so much for joining me on this historical journey. If you found this fascinating, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you won't miss our next adventure into the past. Have you ever flipped through your passport and looked at all those colorful stamps and stickers? Each one tells a story of a journey, a new place, a memory made. But have you ever wondered where this whole system of visas and entry stamps came from? It wasn't always this way. For much of human history, people moved across the land with far fewer restrictions. So, how did we get from a world of relatively open movement to one of carefully controlled borders, visas, and a rainbow of ink in our little travel books? Let's turn back the clock. For centuries, the idea of a border was often fluid. It might be a river, a mountain range, or just the edge of a kingdom's influence. While safe conduct letters and early passports existed, they were mostly for diplomats, merchants, and messengers, ensuring their protection rather than checking their identity at a formal crossing. The average person, if they traveled at all, often just went. But as the world entered the 19th and early 20th centuries, something began to change dramatically. The rise of the modern nation-state was a game changer. Countries started to define themselves not just by culture or language, but by clear, internationally recognized lines on a map. With these new solid borders came a new question: who gets to cross them and under what conditions? This wasn't just about territory. It was about national identity, security, and economic control. Governments wanted to know who was coming in, who was going out, and why. This desire for control laid the groundwork for the system we know today. One of the biggest catalysts for this shift was the railway. Suddenly, mass travel was possible. Thousands of people could cross from one country to another in a matter of hours. This unprecedented mobility made governments nervous. How could they keep track of everyone? Concerns about immigration, labor competition, and public health grew. In the United States, for example, laws began to emerge in the late 19th century to regulate the influx of immigrants, marking an early, significant step towards formalized border control. It was the beginning of a new era where a person's nationality started to matter more than ever at the border. Then came the First World War, This conflict was the turning point that truly cemented the modern passport and visa system. Suddenly, national security became the absolute top priority. Countries grew deeply suspicious of foreigners, fearing espionage and subversion. The casual cross-border movement of the past was seen as a dangerous vulnerability. In response, nations across Europe and beyond slammed their borders shut. Traveling internationally without a passport became nearly impossible, and even with one you needed more. This is where the visa truly comes into its own. The word visa comes from the Latin carta visa, meaning paper that has been seen. It's essentially permission from a foreign government to even request entry into their country. During and after World War I, countries started requiring visas from foreign nationals. It was an extra layer of security, a pre-screening process. You couldn't just show up at the border with your passport anymore. You needed to go to an embassy or a consulate beforehand and have your purpose for travel vetted and approved. This was a radical change. Your own government's document wasn't enough. You now needed the explicit permission of your destination. Alongside the visa, the practice of stamping passports at entry and exit points became standardized. That satisfying thump of the stamp was more than just a souvenir. It was a data point. It created a record of a person's movement. Border officials could now see exactly when someone entered the country and could check if they overstayed their permitted time. It was a simple but powerful tool for monitoring and enforcing immigration laws. Each stamp was a tiny official mark in the growing ledger of global human movement. Think about what this meant for the traveler. The journey was no longer just a physical one. It became a bureaucratic one, too. You had to gather documents, fill out forms, and sometimes wait weeks or months for a small sticker to be placed in your passport. Travel was becoming more regulated, more documented, and in many ways more complicated. But it was also seen as a necessary evil for a world grappling with new realities of national security, global pandemics, and economic pressures. After the war, many thought these strict controls would be a temporary measure, but they stuck. The League of Nations held conferences in the 1920s to try and standardize passport formats, creating the familiar booklet style we recognize today. The system of passports, visas, and border stamps had become entrenched. It was the new normal. For nations, it was a way to assert sovereignty and control. For individuals, it formalized their identity as a citizen of a particular country, a membership card to the global community, with all the privileges and restrictions that came with it. So, the next time you hand your passport to a border official and get that fresh stamp, remember the long history behind that simple act. It's the result of railways, wars, and the very idea of the modern nation. It's a story of how our world became more connected and, in the very same process, more divided by lines on a map. That little book is so much more than a travel document. It is a testament to how we define who we are and where we belong in the grand tapestry of the world. Thanks for joining me on this journey through history. If you found this interesting, don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories like this and ring the bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video. Have you ever really looked at your passport? That little book filled with stamps, a slightly awkward photo, and a bunch of high-tech security features. It feels so modern, so official. But what if I told you that the idea of carrying a document to prove who you are when you travel is hundreds of years old, and that the way we defined identity on paper has a fascinating and surprisingly visual history? Let's rewind the clock and explore how early modern passports turned our physical selves into official text. Before the age of photography, how could a piece of paper possibly prove you were, well, you? This was the central challenge for early passports. Rulers and authorities needed a way to ensure the person holding the document was the person it described. Their solution was brilliantly simple. They used words to paint a picture. These early travel papers were less like today's passports and more like a detailed missing persons poster, but for someone who wasn't missing. Imagine unfolding a crisp, handwritten document from the 17th or 18th century. Instead of a photo, you'd find a section dedicated to distinguishing marks. This was the heart of the passport's power. It would meticulously list a person's physical characteristics. Things like height, hair and eye color, and the shape of their nose was standard. But it got much more specific. Did you have a scar above your left eyebrow? A mole on your chin? A limp? All these unique details were carefully recorded. These weren't just random observations. They were the biometrics of their day. A gatekeeper or an official at a border would read the description and then look you up and down, comparing the words on the page to the person standing before them. Hair of a chestnut color? Check. A longish face? Check. A small scar near the mouth? Ah, there it is. Check. It was a visual verification process, a human-to-document matchup. The more detailed the description, the harder it was to forge or misuse the passport. And it wasn't just about what you looked like. Your profession, your social standing, and even your reason for travel were often included. A passport might declare its holder a merchant of good standing, traveling to Lyon for the silk trade, or a scholar journeying to the University of Bologna. This context added another layer of identity, telling authorities not just who you were, but what you were doing and whether you belonged. Now let's talk about portraits. While full-blown artist-rendered portraits on every passport were impractical and expensive, the idea of a visual likeness was still incredibly important. For high-ranking individuals, diplomats, nobles, and royalty, passports were often far more elaborate. These could be grand vellum documents adorned with intricate seals and sometimes, yes, a miniature portrait. These portraits were status symbols, a clear indicator that the bearer was a person of immense importance, not to be trifled with. For everyone else, the word portrait had to suffice. Handwriting itself also became a form of identification. Just like today, a signature was a personal mark. The way you looped your G or crossed your T was unique. Early passports required the bearer to sign their name if they were literate. This signature could be compared against other documents, adding another layer of security. The document wasn't just asterisk about asterisk U, it was physically marked asterisk by asterisk U. The very act of signing it bound your identity to the paper. Think about the shift this represents. Before these documents, your identity was tied to your community. People in your village knew who you were. But once you traveled, you were a stranger. The passport changed that. It allowed you to carry your identity with you, neatly packaged on a piece of paper. Your physical traits, once just a part of who you were now codified as official data, as proof of self. This system wasn't perfect, of course. Descriptions could be vague. Two men could both be of medium height with brown hair. And what about fraud? A skilled forger could replicate a document, and a smooth talker might convince a guard that the prominent nose in the description was indeed their own. But despite these flaws, it was a revolutionary step in creating a mobile, verifiable identity. So the next time you breeze through an airport, scanning your e-passport in seconds, take a moment to appreciate the journey it took to get here. From handwritten descriptions of scars and hair color to digital chips and biometric data, the passport has always been about answering one fundamental question. How can I prove that I am me? It's a story of how we learned to trust paper and later pixels to represent our physical selves, enabling us to explore the world while carrying our identity in our pocket. I hope you found this little trip back in time as fascinating as I did. If you enjoyed this, please give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden histories that shape our world. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one. Have you ever really looked at your passport? Not just to check the expiration date, but to truly consider what this little booklet represents. For most of us, it's a key to exciting vacations and new adventures. But for millions, it's something so much more profound. It's a ticket to a new life, a vessel for hope, and a tangible link to a past left behind. Today, we're going to explore the deeply personal side of the passport, looking at how this small document has carried the weight of family histories, dreams, and identities across oceans and continents. Let's start by rewinding the clock. Before the modern passport, travel was a chaotic affair. People carried various letters of passage or safe conduct documents. One of the earliest examples comes from the Bible, in the book of Nehemiah, where a Persian official is granted a letter from the king to ensure safe travel through lands beyond his own. Fast forward to medieval Europe, where monarchs would issue documents to their subjects, essentially requesting other rulers to grant them safe passage. These weren't about identity as we know it today. They were more like a royal recommendation letter. They were for the privileged few diplomats, merchants, and scholars. For the average person, crossing a border, if they ever did, was often a matter of simply walking across and hoping for the best. The concept of a passport for the common person began to take shape with the rise of the nation-state. As borders became more defined, so did the need to identify who belonged where. But it was the advent of railway travel in the 19th century that truly revolutionized things. Suddenly, huge numbers of people could move across Europe faster than ever before. This led to a brief golden age of passport-free travel in some regions. Imagine just hopping on a train in Paris and ending up in Vienna with no one checking your papers. However, this freedom was short-lived. The outbreak of World War I changed everything. Suddenly, countries needed to know exactly who was coming and going. Security became paramount, and the passport system, as we recognize it today, was born. After the war, the League of Nations standardized the format in 1920, creating the little booklets we're all familiar with. This is where the story gets truly personal. Let's talk about migration. For countless families, the passport isn't just a travel document, it's the first chapter of their family's new story. Think about the millions who left Europe after the world wars, clutching documents that were their only proof of identity and their only key to safety. I once heard a story from a woman whose grandparents fled persecution in Eastern Europe. Their passports weren't fancy. They were worn, water-stained, and filled with the stern-faced photos of a young couple who had no idea what the future held. She said that for her family, that document isn't just paper and ink, it's a relic. It represents the courage it took for two people to leave everything they'd ever known for the slim chance of a better life for their children and grandchildren. Every stamp tells a story of a border crossed, a hurdle overcome. Consider the journey of someone like my friend's great-grandfather, who came from a small village in southern Italy in the 1920s. He arrived at Ellis Island with little more than the clothes on his back and a simple travel paper. That piece of paper was his entire identity. It declared his name, his birthplace, and his destination, America. It was the document that allowed him to step off the boat and begin the process of becoming an American citizen. He kept it his entire life, tucked away in a small wooden box. For his family, it's a physical reminder of their roots, of the sacrifices made, and of the incredible journey from a poor village to a new world of opportunity. These papers carry the ghost of a person's entire history. And it's not just stories from the distant past. This happens every single day. Think of the refugee who escapes a war-torn country, for whom a passport or a UN-issued travel document is literally a matter of life and death. It's their proof of existence, their plea for asylum. These documents hold the trauma of what they fled, but also the hope for a future free from fear. I spoke with a volunteer at a resettlement agency who told me about a family she helped. They had one shared travel document for the parents and their 3 small children. She said the father held it like it was the most precious object in the world because to them, it was their lifeline. It wasn't about tourism. It was about survival. Then there are the stories of identity. For people who are adopted internationally or who have mixed heritage, a passport can be a complex symbol. It can represent the country they were born in, a place they may have no memory of, while also representing the country that is now their home. A friend of mine was adopted from South Korea as a baby and grew up in the United States. She told me that for a long time, her Korean passport felt like a connection to a mystery, a life she never knew. When she finally traveled back to Korea as an adult, she said that having a US passport stamped upon arrival, and then seeing her birthplace with her own eyes was an incredibly emotional experience. It was like 2 halves of her story finally coming together, bridging the gap between her past and her present. Her passports were the bookends of her personal journey. These booklets do more than just get us through customs. They are silent witnesses to history. They've been stamped at checkpoints in divided cities. They've been hidden in the linings of coats by people fleeing tyranny, and they've been filled with the visas of students, workers, and dreamers seeking new horizons. Each crease, Each stamp, each faded photograph tells a piece of a larger human story. A story of movement, of change, and of the universal search for a place to call home. The next time you pull out your passport, take a moment. Think about the journeys it has enabled for you, and think about the millions of other stories, just like the ones we've talked about, that are bound within the pages of these small but incredibly powerful books. They are so much more than government-issued documents. They are pocket-sized archives of human migration, exploration, and identity. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the history and personal stories of the passport. If you have a passport story in your family, I would be honored to hear about it in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you found it interesting, and subscribe for more deep dives into the objects that shape our world. See you next time. Have you ever really looked at your passport? This little booklet is more than just a travel document. It's a statement of who you are and where you belong. But have you ever wondered how this powerful symbol of identity came to be? Let's journey back in time to uncover the fascinating history of the passport and how it shaped the very concepts of nationality and citizenship. Believe it or not, the idea of a document granting safe passage is ancient. Think of the Bible, where Nehemiah is given a letter from King Artaxerxes requesting safe conduct through his lands. These early passports weren't about identity, but were essentially letters of recommendation from a powerful ruler. They were for a select few, diplomats, royal messengers, and merchants, not for the common person. The word itself, passport, likely comes from the medieval Latin passus portus, meaning to pass through a port or gate. It was a permission slip, a golden ticket for the privileged. For centuries, this remained the status quo. If you were an ordinary person, you likely lived and died within a few miles of your birthplace. Travel was dangerous and expensive. Borders were porous, and your identity was tied to your local village or lord. Not some abstract concept of a nation. Things started to change with the rise of the modern nation-state, especially after the French Revolution. The idea that people weren't just subjects of a king, but citizens of a nation took hold. This is where the story gets really interesting. In the 19th century, with the arrival of railways and steamships, travel became faster and more accessible. Millions of people began to move across continents, seeking new opportunities or fleeing hardship. This mass migration created a problem for governments. How do you keep track of who is coming in and who is going out? How do you distinguish your citizens from foreigners? Initially, many countries, including the United States, had a very relaxed approach. You could often just show up. But as anxieties about immigration, labor competition, and national security grew, especially around World War I, governments started to demand more control. The war was the real turning point. Suddenly, an unknown person crossing a border wasn't just a migrant, they could be a spy. The casual era of travel was over. In 1920, the League of Nations held the Paris Conference on passports and customs formalities and through tickets. This was a landmark event. For the first time, nations came together to standardize this little document. They agreed on a booklet format, the information it should contain, like a photograph and personal details, and its validity. This conference laid the groundwork for the passport system we know today. The passport was no longer just a letter of safe passage. It was a mandatory tool for identification and control. Now, let's talk about how this transformed the idea of belonging. Before standardized passports, your nationality could be a bit fuzzy. You might feel German because you spoke German and lived in a German-speaking region, but political borders were constantly shifting. The passport made nationality concrete. It was a government-issued declaration. This person is one of ours. Think about the profound impact of this. For people living in empires that were crumbling, like the Austro-Hungarian or Ottoman empires, a new passport from a newly formed country like Czechoslovakia or Turkey was a powerful symbol of a new national identity. It was proof that you belonged to this new political community. Your passport wasn't just paper. It was a piece of the nation itself. But this new system also created a heartbreaking problem: the stateless. What happened if your country disappeared? Or if a new regime stripped you of your citizenship? This was the tragic fate of many after the Russian Revolution. They became holders of the Nansen passport, a special identity document for stateless refugees, named after the Norwegian diplomat Fridtjof Nansen. It wasn't a true passport, as it didn't confer the rights of a citizen, but it was a lifeline that allowed people to travel and find refuge. This highlighted a stark new reality. Without a passport, without a nation to claim you, you were in a legal limbo, a ghost in the international system. Your passport became your story, written by the state. The stamps inside told the tale of your journeys, but the cover itself told the world who you were. The color, the crest, the language, all of it broadcasted your national allegiance. During the Cold War, the color of your passport, the dark blue of an American passport versus the deep red of a Soviet one, was a potent political statement. It dictated where you could go and how you would be treated. It was a tangible marker of which side of the Iron Curtain you were on. Even the design of passports reflects a nation's character and values. Some countries use their passports to celebrate their culture and history. The Norwegian passport, for example, has pages that reveal a stunning illustration of the northern lights under UV light. Finland's passport is a flipbook of a walking moose. These aren't just security features. They are expressions of national pride, little pieces of art that say, "This is who we are." Today, in our globalized world, the passport continues to evolve. We're moving towards biometric passports with microchips containing our fingerprints and facial scans. The document is becoming ever more sophisticated, a high-tech fusion of identity and security. But its fundamental role remains the same. It is the key that unlocks the world, but it is also the lock that defines who is in and who is out. The next time you hold your passport, take a moment to appreciate its journey. This small book carries the weight of history, war, and revolution. It's a testament to the rise of nations, the struggles of migrants, and the very modern idea that every one of us belongs somewhere. It's the story of how we, as a global community, decided to define ourselves and each other. Thank you so much for joining me on this historical deep dive. If you found this journey as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories behind the everyday objects that shape our world. We'd love to have you in our community. Have you ever really looked at your passport? I mean, really looked at it. Beyond your slightly awkward photo and the smudged entry stamps. This little booklet is more than just a travel document. It's a masterpiece of design, a silent storyteller of national pride, and a fortress of security features. Today, we're diving deep into the quiet art of passport design, exploring the covers, coats of arms, watermarks, and all the tiny details that signal sovereignty and safety. Let's start with the cover. It's the first thing you see, the handshake of a nation. The color alone speaks volumes. While there's no international rule, most passports come in one of four main colors: red, blue, green, or black. Red, or more accurately, burgundy, is famously used by members of the European Union, symbolizing a collective identity. It's also a popular choice for countries with a historical or current communist system. Blue is often seen as the color of the New World. Countries in North and South America, as well as Oceania, frequently use shades of blue, possibly symbolizing the vast oceans that separate them. Green is a color deeply significant in many Muslim-majority nations, as it holds a special place in Islam. Think of countries like Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Morocco. And black? It tends to be chosen for its practicality and formal appearance. It shows less dirt and looks official. New Zealand's passport, for example, is famously black, reflecting one of their national colors. But the color is just the beginning. Emblazoned on the front of almost every passport is a national emblem or a coat of arms. This is where a country truly gets to show off its identity. The United States passport features the Great Seal, with its bald eagle clutching an olive branch and arrows, representing a desire for peace but a readiness for war. The United Kingdom's passport bears the Royal Arms, a complex shield featuring symbols of England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, supported by the English lion and the Scottish unicorn. These emblems are packed with history, mythology, and national values. They are intricate works of art, carefully engraved to create a sense of authority and heritage. Take a moment to look at your own passport's emblem. What stories does it tell about your country's past and its aspirations? It's a miniature history lesson right in your hands. Now, let's open it up and venture into the world of hidden security. This is where passport design gets really clever. The pages you get stamped aren't just blank paper. They are canvases filled with intricate patterns, watermarks, and illustrations that are incredibly difficult to forge. These are called visa pages, and they are a visual celebration of a nation's culture and landmarks. The Canadian passport, for instance, reveals a stunning secret under UV light. What appear to be simple illustrations of Canadian landscapes and historical figures transform into a vibrant, glowing spectacle of fireworks, constellations, and the northern lights. It's security disguised as beauty. Similarly, the Finnish passport is a delightful flipbook. If you flick through the pages quickly, you'll see a moose walking across the bottom corner. Norway's passport pages depict minimalist landscapes that, under UV light, reveal the aurora borealis dancing in the sky. These aren't just fun gimmicks. They are complex security features. The level of detail, the precision printing, and the use of special inks make them a counterfeiter's nightmare. Each page is a layer of defense. And then there are the watermarks. Hold a page of your passport up to the light. You'll likely see a faint image embedded within the paper itself. This is created during the paper-making process and is another classic security measure. It's subtle, elegant, and very hard to replicate without the original manufacturing equipment. Many modern passports also incorporate holographic overlays on the biodata page, the one with your photo. These holograms change appearance as you tilt the passport, displaying different patterns or images. Look closely at yours. You might see your country's flag, a national symbol, or even a miniature version of your own photo, all shimmering in the light. The font used for the text, the type of stitching that binds the booklet, the unique serial number perforated through the pages, every single element is a deliberate choice. Even the thread used to sew the passport together can be a security feature, often containing multiple colors or glowing under UV light. This meticulous attention to detail is what makes a passport so trustworthy. It's a symphony of design and technology working in harmony to confirm one simple but profound fact, that you are who you say you are. But beyond the high-tech security, there's a real artistry to these documents. Passport designers are unsung heroes of graphic design. They have to balance the strict requirements of international travel standards with the desire to create something that represents the soul of a nation. They must weave together symbols of history, nature, and progress into a cohesive and secure design. The Japanese passport, for example, features the iconic chrysanthemum seal on its cover and delicate cherry blossom motifs on its inner pages, celebrating both imperial heritage and natural beauty. The Swiss passport is a masterclass in modern, minimalist design, reflecting the country's reputation for precision and order. Its pages are adorned with graphic representations of its cantons and famous mountain peaks, a clean and contemporary take on national identity. In recent years, the biggest evolution in passport design has been the integration of the biometric chip, often symbolized by a small camera-like logo on the cover. This chip electronically stores your personal data and a digital version of your photograph, adding another powerful layer of security. It allows for faster and more secure processing at automated border gates. While you can't see the technology, its presence is now a standard feature, marking the passport's journey from a simple paper letter to a sophisticated piece of smart technology. So, the next time you're waiting in an airport line, take a moment to appreciate the small book in your hand. It's more than just a key to crossing borders. It's a portable museum of national art, a pocket-sized declaration of sovereignty, and a marvel of security engineering. From the color of its cover to the hidden images that glow in the dark, every detail tells a story of identity, pride, and the universal human desire to explore our world safely. It's a testament to the fact that sometimes the most important things come in small, beautifully designed packages. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the art of the passport. If you found this interesting, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives, and share this video with your travel-loving friends. Have you ever felt that heart-stopping panic of a misplaced wallet or a lost phone? Now, imagine that feeling, but the item you've lost is your passport, and you're thousands of miles from home. It's a traveler's ultimate nightmare. A tiny booklet that holds your identity, your right to travel, and your ticket back. We often think of history as grand battles and sweeping changes, but sometimes history is found in the quiet, desperate moments of a single traveler facing a bureaucratic wall. Today, we're diving into the human side of travel document stories of lost papers, unexpected kindness, and the second chances that allow a journey to continue. Before the standardized, secure passports we know today, travel documents were a chaotic mix of letters of introduction, safe conduct papers, and local permits. Losing one could be a minor inconvenience or a major disaster, depending on where you were and who you encountered. Picture this: a 19th century merchant on the grand tour of Europe. His papers, a collection of handwritten notes from various consulates, slipped from his coat pocket in a bustling Viennese market. Suddenly, he's a man without a country, unable to prove who he is or where he belongs. His journey comes to a screeching halt, his only hope: to find a sympathetic official, a clerk willing to bend the rules, or take a leap of faith based on a handshake and an honest face. These moments, these small acts of bureaucratic kindness, are the unsung heroes of travel history. For every story of a traveler stranded, there's another of a consular officer working late to issue a temporary pass, or a border guard accepting a sworn statement in lieu of a missing stamp. Think of the displaced people after major conflicts, like the World Wars. Millions were left stateless, their original documents lost or rendered worthless by redrawn borders. Organizations like the Red Cross and the League of Nations stepped in, creating temporary documents like the Nansen passport. This wasn't just a piece of paper, it was a lifeline. It was a second chance at a life, a chance to find safety, work, and a new home. One of my favorite stories comes from the memoirs of a backpacker in the 1970s. He was traveling through Southeast Asia when his bag, containing his passport and all his money, was stolen. Stranded and heartbroken, he made his way to the embassy in a state of despair. He expected a mountain of paperwork and weeks of waiting. Instead, he was met by a consular officer who, seeing his distress, not only fast-tracked his temporary passport, but also lent him $20 from his own wallet to get a meal and a place to stay for the night. The officer simply said, "We've all been there. Pay it forward someday." This small act of trust didn't just solve a practical problem. It restored his faith in people and turned a potential disaster into a defining story of his travels. These incidents highlight a fundamental tension in the history of the passport. On one hand, it's a rigid tool of control, a way for states to monitor and restrict movement. But on the other, the systems built around it have had to develop a degree of flexibility, a human element to handle the messy reality of life. The creation of temporary travel documents, emergency certificates, and even just the discretionary power given to officials on the ground shows an understanding that things go wrong. Papers get lost, situations change, and people need help. This bureaucratic kindness isn't just about charity. It's a practical necessity. A stranded traveler is a problem for the host country. Facilitating their journey, whether it's onward or homeward, is often the most sensible solution for everyone. So, while we might curse the red tape and long queues, it's worth remembering the system's hidden capacity for compassion. It's in the emergency travel document issued after a natural disaster, allowing a family to evacuate. It's in the visa extension granted to someone who fell ill. And it's in the patient border agent helping a flustered tourist find the right form. These stories of lost papers and second chances remind us that behind every stamp, every application, and every regulation, there are people. People who lose things, people who make mistakes, and people who, on a good day, are willing to help. The passport may define our identity in the eyes of the state, but it's these moments of human connection that truly define our journey. They are the gentle threads of empathy woven into the stern fabric of international travel, proving that even in a world of rules, there's always room for a little grace. So the next time you hold your passport, think of it not just as a key to other countries, but as a testament to the countless journeys that came before yours. And maybe, just maybe, keep an extra digital copy of it just in case. It could be the start of your own story of a second chance. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through a more personal side of passport history. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe for more explorations into the things that shape our world. We love hearing your own travel stories, so drop a comment below. Until next time, travel safely and stay curious. Ever wonder how this little booklet in your pocket became the key to unlocking the world? The story of the passport is more than just ink and paper. It's a fascinating journey through history, power, and identity. Let's dive into how this small document changed everything. Way back in ancient times, the idea of a passport wasn't for everyone. It was more like a letter of safe passage, granted by rulers to their most trusted officials or envoys. Think of it as a VIP pass for the ancient world. If you were a messenger for the Persian king or a Roman dignitary, you'd carry a document that basically said, "This person is with me." Don't mess with them. For the average person, travel was a risky business with no such protections. As we move into the Middle Ages, things started to change, but slowly, local lords and city-states began issuing documents to their citizens. But these were mostly for internal travel or to control who was coming and going. If you wanted to cross from one feudal territory to another, you might need a letter to prove you weren't a spy or a runaway. The word passport itself comes from the French passer, to pass, and port, a port or gate. It was literally a document to pass through a gate. The real turning point came with the rise of modern nation-states in Europe. Kings and queens wanted to know exactly who was in their realm. King Henry V of England is often credited with inventing something close to the first real passport, a document to help his subjects prove who they were, especially when traveling abroad. But even then, these were handwritten, inconsistent, and pretty easy to forge. There was no single, unified system. Fast forward to the 19th century and the world was opening up. The dawn of the railway age made travel faster and more accessible than ever before. Suddenly, people were crossing borders in unprecedented numbers. For a brief, glorious period, passport requirements in many parts of Europe were actually relaxed. You could hop on a train in Paris and ride all the way to St. Petersburg with minimal hassle. It was a golden age of passport-free travel, but sadly, it wasn't built to last. The outbreak of World War I changed everything. Suddenly, national security became the top priority. Countries slammed their borders shut, and the passport transformed from a simple letter of introduction into a mandatory tool for control and surveillance. Governments needed to track citizens, identify potential enemies, and manage the flow of people in a time of intense global conflict. This was the moment the modern passport system as we know it was truly born. After the war, the League of Nations stepped in to try and standardize this new reality. In 1920, they held a conference in Paris to design a universal passport format. They decided on a 32-page booklet with a specific layout, written in French and at least one other language. While not every country adopted it immediately, this was the blueprint for the little books we carry today. It was the first time the international community agreed that a passport should look and feel a certain way. But technology, as it always does, kept marching on. The simple paper booklet was no longer enough. The age of air travel brought new challenges. Airports needed to process thousands of passengers quickly and securely. This led to the creation of the machine-readable passport in the 1980s. You know that section at the bottom of your photo page with the 2 lines of text and chevrons. That's the machine-readable zone, or MRZ. It contains your key information in a format that a scanner can read in seconds, dramatically speeding up immigration lines. The next great leap was driven by security concerns in the 21st century. The world demanded a passport that was almost impossible to forge. The answer? Biometrics. The e-passport was born, embedding a tiny microchip right into the document. This chip stores a digital copy of your photo, which can be compared to your face by a camera at the border. Many also store fingerprint or iris scan data. This technology essentially links your physical identity to your travel document in a way that was previously unimaginable. From a king's letter to a biometric chip, the passport has had an incredible evolution. It reflects our world's shifting attitudes towards borders, freedom, and security. It's a symbol of national identity, a record of our journeys, and a powerful tool that shapes how we move across the planet. This small booklet tells a big story about where we've been and where we're going next. So next time you're waiting in an immigration line, take a moment to look at your passport. It's not just a travel document. It's a piece of history you can hold in your hand. Thanks for joining me on this journey through time. If you found this interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories about the world around us. See you in the next video. Have you ever flipped through your passport, tracing the faded stamps and worn-out visas? It's more than just a travel document, isn't it? It's a pocket-sized memoir, a personal map of your life's adventures. Each stamp tells a story: a bustling market in Marrakesh, a serene temple in Kyoto, a chaotic street in New York. These little books are the unsung heroes of our modern world, the keys that unlock borders and connect humanity. But have you ever wondered how this powerful little document came to be? From royal letters of safe passage to the biometric chips of today, the history of the passport is a fascinating journey through migration, exploration, and the very concept of identity. So grab your passport and let's embark on a trip back in time to uncover the incredible story of how this small booklet shaped our world. The idea of a document granting safe passage is ancient. Think back to the Hebrew Bible, where Nehemiah is given a letter from King Artaxerxes of Persia, requesting that governors in lands beyond the Euphrates grant him safe passage to Judah. This wasn't a passport as we know it, but it was the seed of an idea, a formal request from one authority to another, ensuring a traveler's protection. For centuries, these documents, often called letters of safe conduct, were reserved for the elite diplomats, royal messengers, and important merchants. They weren't about proving who you were, but rather about whose protection you were under. For the average person, travel was dangerous and rare. You were born, lived, and died largely in the same community, your identity tied to your village, not a nation. The turning point came in the 5th-10th century. In England, King Henry V introduced what some consider the first true passport. These documents, known as safe conducts, were issued to his subjects, whether at home or abroad, and included a physical description of the holder. For the first time, a travel document began to link a person's physical identity to their nationality. This was a revolutionary concept. It was no longer just about whose permission you had, but about who you were. Other European monarchies soon followed suit. The French term passport literally meant to pass through a port or a city gate, highlighting their function as a key to enter fortified cities and maritime hubs. But even then, they were far from mandatory. You only really needed one if you were venturing into potentially hostile territory or needed to prove your status. The 19th century, with its industrial revolution, changed everything. Suddenly, railways crisscrossed continents and steamships traversed oceans. Travel became faster, cheaper, and more accessible than ever before. Millions of people began to migrate, seeking new opportunities in lands far from home. This massive wave of human movement created a problem for governments. How do you keep track of who is coming and going? How do you distinguish between your own citizens and foreigners? The casual system of letters and local attestations was no longer sufficient. Countries began to formalize their passport systems, but it was still a chaotic patchwork. Some nations required them, others didn't. There was no standard format, and they could be anything from a single sheet of paper to an elaborate handwritten booklet. The real catalyst for the modern passport system, however, was a global crisis, World War I. As nations went to war, borders slammed shut. Suddenly, controlling who crossed your frontiers became a matter of national security. Governments needed a reliable way to identify friend from foe, to prevent spies and enemy agents from entering their countries. In this climate of suspicion, the passport became mandatory for international travel. After the war, the League of Nations stepped in. In 1920, they held the Paris Conference on Passports, the first international meeting to standardize these crucial documents. They recommended a 32-page booklet format in a single language, French, with the holder's photograph and personal details. This was the birth of the passport, as we recognize it today, a standardized, internationally accepted form of identification. The evolution didn't stop there. The mid-20th century saw the addition of more security features to combat forgery. Lamination, special inks, and watermarks became standard. Then came the digital age. The aftermath of the September 11th attacks in 2001 ushered in a new era of passport security. The International Civil Aviation Organization, or ICAO, set new global standards for machine-readable biometric passports, often called e-passports. These documents contain a small electronic chip that stores the holder's personal data, including a digital photograph and, in some countries, fingerprints or an iris scan. This technology makes passports incredibly difficult to forge and allows for faster, automated border crossings. From a simple letter of request to a high-tech smart card, the passport has continuously adapted to the needs and fears of its time. So, what does the future hold? We might see the rise of digital passports stored securely on our smartphones, eliminating the physical booklet altogether. Some countries are already experimenting with this. Imagine simply scanning your face or your phone to cross a border, your identity verified in an instant against a global database. This identity on the go could make travel even more seamless. But it also raises important questions about privacy and data security. Who controls this information? How is it protected? As we move towards a more connected and digital world, the debate over the balance between convenience and privacy will shape the next generation of travel documents. The passport of the future might look very different, but its core purpose will remain the same: to answer the fundamental question, who are you and where do you belong? And that brings us back to where we started. Pick up your passport again. Feel the texture of the paper. Look at the stamps, the visas, the slightly faded photograph of a younger you. This isn't just a government-issued ID, it's a scrapbook of your journeys. Each mark is a memory. That visa you waited weeks for, the entry stamp from a life-changing trip, the exit stamp from a place you were sad to leave. It quietly tells the story of where you've been, the cultures you've experienced, and the person you've become along the way. In a world of digital profiles and fleeting online identities, the passport is a tangible record of a life lived between places. It is your personal map, your chronicle of exploration, and a testament to your own unique journey across this incredible planet. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the history of the passport. If you found this interesting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories about the hidden histories that shape our world. We'd love to have you in our community. So, happy travels. Have you ever had that heart-stopping moment? You were in a foreign country, you reach for your passport and it's gone. Lost, stolen, or expired. Suddenly, you're stranded, a ghost in the system, unable to prove who you are or get back home. It's a modern traveler's nightmare. But what happens when this isn't just an individual mishap, but the reality for millions caught in the crossfire of war, political upheaval, or natural disaster? When an entire nation collapses, what happens to its people's right to move? This is where a fascinating, often overlooked chapter in the history of travel documents begins. The story of emergency passages. These aren't your standard leather-bound passports. We're talking about temporary papers, laissez-passers, and special transit documents, scraps of paper that, in moments of crisis, hold the power of life and death, of freedom and confinement. They are the unsung heroes of global migration, allowing refugees, diplomats, and stranded travelers to cross borders when all other doors are slammed shut. Let's journey back to the early 20th century. The world is in turmoil. World War I has just shattered empires, redrawing the map of Europe and leaving millions stateless. Imagine you were a citizen of the Austro-Hungarian Empire or the Ottoman Empire. One day, you have a nationality, a passport, a home. The next, your country simply ceases to exist. Your documents are now worthless pieces of paper. You are, in the cold, bureaucratic language of the time, a stateless person. You can't go home because home is gone. You can't move forward because no country will accept you without valid papers. It was a crisis of identity on an unimaginable scale. The international community, still reeling from the war, had to find a solution, and fast. The existing passport system, designed for orderly peacetime travel, was completely broken. It was never meant to handle millions of displaced people fleeing for their lives. Enter one of the great humanitarians of the era, Fridtjof Nansen, a Norwegian explorer, scientist and diplomat. Nansen was appointed the League of Nations' first High Commissioner for Refugees in 1921. He saw the suffering of stateless refugees, particularly Russians fleeing the Bolshevik Revolution, who were trapped in a legal no man's land. His brilliant, simple solution was the Nansen passport. This wasn't a passport in the traditional sense. It didn't confer nationality. Instead, it was an internationally recognized identity certificate for stateless refugees. It certified who you were and, crucially, gave you the legal right to travel across borders to find asylum or new opportunities. For the first time, the international community acknowledged a responsibility to people who had no government to protect them. The Nansen passport was a revolutionary document. It was a lifeline. For a small fee, a refugee could get this certificate, which was eventually recognized by more than 50 countries. It allowed artists like Marc Chagall and Igor Stravinsky and countless ordinary families to escape persecution and rebuild their lives. It was a powerful statement that human dignity and the right to movement transcended national borders. The Nansen passport set a precedent, creating a new category of travel documents designed for emergencies. As the 20th century wore on, new crises demanded new solutions. During World War II, governments in exile issued papers to their citizens trapped abroad. Diplomats used special laissez-passes for urgent missions, bypassing the usual red tape. Think of the classic movie Casablanca. The entire plot revolves around obtaining letters of transit, fictional, but based on the very real emergency documents that were a currency of hope in wartime Europe. These papers represented a desperate gamble for freedom, a way to navigate a world of closed borders and suspicious officials. After the war, the United Nations took over the role of the League of Nations, and they continue this legacy today. The UN issues its own laissez-passer, a travel document used by officials on UN missions, allowing them to move quickly through crisis zones. Similarly, the International Committee of the Red Cross issues emergency travel documents to help reunite families separated by conflict or disaster, a purely humanitarian act of passage. So, what about that nightmare scenario we started with? What if you, a tourist in the 21st century, lose your passport today? Well, you'll encounter the modern version of these emergency documents. You go to your country's embassy or consulate. After verifying your identity, they won't issue you a full 10-year passport on the spot. Instead, they'll give you an emergency travel certificate or a limited validity passport. This document is typically a simple, one-page paper, sometimes even handwritten. It looks much less impressive than your regular passport, but it's incredibly powerful. It's designed for a single purpose, to get you home. It's usually valid for just one journey, directly back to your home country, or perhaps to the nearest country where you can get a full replacement. It's the modern-day laissez-passer, a temporary key to unlock a border that has suddenly slammed shut. It's a safety net woven into the fabric of international diplomacy. These emergency documents also play a crucial role in another more somber situation, deportation. When a country needs to remove a foreign national who has no valid travel documents, it can't just put them on a plane. The airline and the destination country need paperwork. In these cases, the person's home country might issue a one-way travel document, sometimes called a laissez-passer, specifically for the purpose of repatriation. It's a stark reminder that the power to grant passage is also the power to enforce removal. These papers are the administrative tools that manage the movement of people at the very edges of the international system, whether they are fleeing towards safety or being sent away. They highlight the immense power held by states to control who crosses their borders and under what conditions. From the grand-scale humanitarian crises of the 20th century to the personal panic of a lost passport, emergency travel documents tell a story of ingenuity, compassion, and control. They are the exception that proves the rule, born from moments when the standard system of identity and nationality breaks down. They reveal a fundamental tension in our modern world. the ideal of free movement versus the reality of guarded borders. The Nansen passport, the UN laissez-passer, and the simple emergency certificate from an embassy all share a common DNA. They are acknowledgments that, in times of crisis, our shared humanity requires us to create pathways where none exist. They are not just administrative tools. They are instruments of hope, symbols of last resort, and proof that even a single piece of paper can change the course of a life. The next time you hold your passport, remember the hidden history of its emergency cousins, the humble documents that have, for over a century, allowed people to find their way home. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this journey into the world of emergency travel documents interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden histories that shape our world. We'd love to have you as part of our community. See you in the next video. Imagine you're fleeing your home, not by choice, but because you have to. You've left everything behind, and all you have are the clothes on your back and a desperate hope for safety. But at every border, every checkpoint, you're asked for one thing you don't have: a passport. Without it, you're invisible, a ghost in the system with no country to call your own. This isn't a scene from a movie. It's the stark reality of statelessness, a limbo experienced by millions throughout history and even today. But what happens when you're stateless? When the country you were born in no longer exists or has stripped you of your citizenship? This is where our story today begins, in the chaotic aftermath of World War I. Empires had crumbled, the Austro-Hungarian, the Russian, the Ottoman, leaving countless people as citizens of nowhere. They were refugees, adrift without the single most important document for international travel, the passport. The international community had to act. Enter Fridtjof Nansen, a Norwegian explorer, scientist, and humanitarian. You might know him for his polar expeditions, but his greatest journey was arguably into the heart of human bureaucracy. In 1922, as the High Commissioner for Refugees for the League of Nations, he pioneered a revolutionary document, the Nansen passport. This wasn't a passport in the traditional sense. It didn't grant citizenship. What it did was give stateless individuals an identity. It was a certificate recognized by more than 50 countries that said, this person is real. They have a right to travel, to seek work, to find a new home. It was quite literally a paper of protection. Think about the sheer power of that. Suddenly, a Russian artist who had fled the revolution, like Marc Chagall or Igor Stravinsky, could travel to Paris to continue their work. An Armenian family escaping persecution could find refuge in another country. The Nansen passport was a key that unlocked a future for people who had been locked out of the world. It was a testament to the idea that human dignity should not depend on the stamp of a single nation. The stories of those who held these papers are incredible. They are tales of resilience, of starting over with nothing but a document and a dream. But it wasn't always a smooth journey. Even with a Nansen passport, entry wasn't guaranteed. Everything often depended on the compassion of individual border guards and officials. There are countless accounts of officials who bent the rules, who saw the human being behind the paperwork. A consul who issued a visa against protocol, a border guard who looked the other way, a clerk who expedited a family's application. These small acts of kindness, these moments of compassionate rebellion against rigid bureaucracy, were lifelines. They were the unofficial human element that made the official system work. These officials understood something fundamental, that papers and borders are human inventions, but the need for safety and a place to belong is a universal human right. They chose empathy over regulation, and in doing so, they helped write new chapters for thousands of families. This history isn't just a relic of the past. Even today, people rely on special travel certificates and protective documents. Think of refugees fleeing conflict who are issued travel documents by the United Nations or host countries. These papers are modern-day Nansen passports, offering a chance at a new beginning. For instance, after the fall of Saigon in 1975, thousands of Vietnamese refugees arrived in camps around the world. They were stateless. They couldn't go back, and they didn't yet have a new home. Humanitarian organizations and host governments worked tirelessly to issue them travel documents, allowing them to be resettled in countries like the United States, Canada, and Australia. For these boat people, A simple folder of papers was the difference between a life in limbo and a life of possibility. Each of these documents, from the Nansen passport of the 1920s to the refugee travel documents of today, tells a profound story. It's a story about loss and displacement, but it's also a story about the global community's attempt to build a safety net. It proves that identity is more than just a birthright tied to a piece of land. It can also be something that is granted, protected, and honored by others. These papers are a powerful symbol. They represent the moment a person goes from being a stateless problem to an individual with a recognized identity and a future. They are the tangible proof that someone, somewhere, has extended a hand and said, "You belong in this world." So, the next time you hold your passport, take a moment to think about what it truly represents. It's more than just a booklet for vacation. It's a key to the world, a proof of identity, and a privilege that many have fought and are still fighting to obtain. It's a legacy built not just on laws and treaties, but on the courage of refugees and the compassion of strangers who chose to see a person, not just a problem. The history of these protective documents reminds us that our world is interconnected and that our shared humanity can, and should, transcend borders. It's a powerful lesson in how a small piece of paper can enable migration, create identity, and ultimately save a life. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through a lesser-known part of passport history. If you found this story as moving and important as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the things that shape our world. Drop a comment below if you have any thoughts or stories to share. Stay curious. Have you ever thought about the best gift you've ever received? Was it something shiny, something expensive? Or was it something that opened up a world of possibilities? Today, we're going to talk about one of the most powerful gifts a person can receive, a passport. It might seem like just a small booklet, but it's a key that unlocks dreams, reunites families, and literally changes lives. Let's step back in time. For most of history, the idea of a passport, as we know, it didn't exist. People moved, they migrated, they explored, but the formal documentation was often reserved for diplomats or merchants. The average person's world was much smaller. But as nations became more defined and travel more common, this little book started to gain incredible importance. It wasn't just a travel document. It became a symbol of identity, of belonging, of having a place in the world. Now, imagine receiving your very first passport. For many, it's a profound rite of passage. It's that moment you transition from being a child under your parents' wing to an individual with the freedom to explore the globe. I've heard so many stories of parents gifting a passport to their child on their 18th birthday or upon high school graduation. It's not just a gift of paper and ink. It's a gift of trust, of independence. It's a parent saying, "The world is yours. Go see it. Go learn from it. Go find yourself in it." This isn't just about a vacation. It's about empowering the next generation to become global citizens, to broaden their horizons and understand different cultures. It's a tangible encouragement to chase their ambitions, whether that's studying abroad, volunteering in a distant country, or simply backpacking through new lands. Think about the sheer surprise of it. Imagine you've been dreaming of seeing the pyramids of Egypt or walking the Great Wall of China, but it always felt like a distant fantasy. Then, for a special occasion, someone hands you a small wrapped box. You open it, and inside isn't jewelry or a gadget, but a brand new passport with your photo in it, accompanied by a plane ticket. The shock, the joy, the sudden realization that your dream is about to become reality. That's a feeling you never forget. This kind of gift transforms a wish into a plan. It's an incredibly thoughtful way of saying, "I see your dreams, I hear your passions, and I want to help you achieve them." It's an investment in someone's happiness and personal growth. These surprise passports often kickstart the most memorable adventures of a person's life, creating stories they'll tell for decades to come. But the passport as a gift goes even deeper, often playing a pivotal role in the most significant life events. Let's talk about love. In our interconnected world, it's common for people to fall in love across borders. For these couples, a passport isn't just for tourism. It's the essential tool that bridges the distance. The process of getting a visa or residency in a partner's country is long and arduous. So when that final approved passport or visa arrives, it's more than just a document. It's the ticket to a shared future. It represents the end of long-distance calls and tearful goodbyes at airports. It's the beginning of building a home together, of waking up next to the person you love. Gifting a plane ticket to finally close that distance, enabled by that powerful little book, is one of the most romantic and life-altering gestures one can make. It's the gift of togetherness. Then there are careers. In today's global economy, many dream of working abroad, gaining international experience, or pursuing a unique opportunity that only exists in another country. Securing a work visa and the accompanying passport stamps can be a huge challenge. I've known people whose families have pooled their resources to help them get the necessary documents and flights to start a new job overseas. When a family gifts this opportunity, they are gifting a career, a chance for professional and financial betterment that could change the trajectory of that person's entire life and even the lives of their family members back home. It's a belief in their potential, a sacrifice made to open doors that would have otherwise remained closed. This isn't just about a job. It's about upward mobility, skill development, and the pursuit of one's full potential on a global stage. Perhaps the most moving role a passport plays as a gift is when it's passed down as an heirloom. This is more common than you might think, especially in families with a history of migration. An old expired passport, filled with the stamps and visas of a parent or grandparent, is a treasure. It's a physical record of their journey, their struggles, and their triumphs. When a grandparent gives their grandchild their first passport and, alongside it, their own well-worn one, it's a powerful symbolic act. It's like saying, "This is where I came from. These are the journeys that led to you. Now, it's your turn to write your own story." That old passport is a map of the family's history. Each stamp tells a story of fleeing hardship, of seeking opportunity, of building a new life. It connects the younger generation to their roots and inspires them to continue the legacy of exploration and courage. It's a reminder that their ability to travel freely was often built on the sacrifices of those who came before them. So the next time you see a passport, don't just see it as a government-issued document. See it for what it truly is, a vessel for dreams, a catalyst for change, and one of the most meaningful gifts a person can ever receive. It's a key that unlocks not just borders but futures. It opens doors to love, to careers, to education, and to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world we all share. It's the gift of a bigger life. Thank you so much for watching. What's the most meaningful gift you've ever received? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey into the story of the passport, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories about the fascinating objects that shape our world. See you in the next video. Have you ever looked at your family's passports, all lined up together? Each one is a little book, but together they tell a much bigger story. A story of love, of adventure, and of a family's journey through the world. Today, we're exploring the incredibly personal side of passports, how these official documents become the keepers of our most precious family histories. For many of us, our very first official document, besides a birth certificate, is a passport. I still remember getting my first one as a kid. It felt like a golden ticket to the entire world. And that feeling is universal. For a parent, getting their newborn's first passport is a monumental step. It's a moment filled with hopes and dreams for the future, dreams of showing their child the wonders of the world, of visiting grandparents across the sea, or of starting a new life in a new land. It's more than just paperwork. It's the first chapter in that child's story of global citizenship. The process itself is a rite of passage. The struggle to get a perfect, non-blurry, eyes open, no smiling photo of a baby is a modern parenting challenge that connects us all. It's a funny, sometimes frustrating, but ultimately endearing experience that becomes a cherished memory. That slightly bewildered or grumpy baby photo, tucked away in a passport, becomes a priceless snapshot of a fleeting moment in time. And as families grow, so do their collections of passports. Think about adding a dependent to your passport or registering a child born abroad. These aren't just administrative tasks. They are acts of weaving your family fabric tighter, ensuring that every member is recognized, protected, and connected, no matter where they are. Each stamp, each visa, adds another thread to that tapestry. A passport is a practical tool, yes, but it's also a vessel of tender memories. It's the proof that you were all together on that beach vacation, the one where the kids built sandcastles for hours. It's the evidence of that trip to visit relatives, where generations reconnected and shared stories. When you flip through an old passport, you're not just seeing entry and exit stamps. You're reliving moments. You're remembering the taste of a foreign food, the sound of a different language, the feeling of holding your child's hand as you stepped into a new country together. This becomes especially poignant for families who migrate. The passport is the document that allows a family to stay together, to build a new home, and to create a future. It's the link that keeps family histories aligned across borders. A child might have a passport from one country, their parents from another, but together, these documents tell a story of resilience, courage, and the powerful bond of family. They represent the sacrifices made and the opportunities created, all for the sake of the next generation. Over time, these little books become a family archive. Imagine sitting down with your kids or grandkids and pulling out a stack of old expired passports. You can trace your family's entire journey. Look, here's the visa from when we moved to Canada. Remember this stamp? That was our trip to Japan for your 10th birthday. Each page is a prompt for a story, a gateway to a shared memory. The evolution of passport photos alone tells a story, from a chubby-cheeked baby to a gawky teenager, to a confident young adult. It's a visual timeline of growing up, documented by international travel. In this sense, passports do something magical. They transform bureaucratic requirements into a tangible family legacy. They're the official record of our unofficial adventures. They chronicle not just where we've been, but who we were at that moment in time, and most importantly, who we were with. They are a testament to the fact that the greatest explorations are the ones we share with the people we love. The world is a vast and amazing place, but it's the journeys we take together that truly define our lives. So next time you pull out your passport, take a moment. Don't just see it as a travel document. See it as a chapter in your family's unique and ongoing story. A story of connection, exploration, and the unbreakable bonds that cross any and every border. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this little trip down memory lane, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories about the things that connect us all. See you in the next video. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our deep dive into the fascinating history of the passport. So far, we've journeyed through centuries of travel, from ancient safe conducts to the standardized booklets we know today. But there's a special category of passport that operates in a world of its own. A world of international relations, quiet privilege, and subtle power. Today, we're unlocking the secrets of the diplomatic passport. Have you ever wondered what makes these passports so special? They're not just for holidays. Issued to high-ranking government officials, diplomats, and envoys, these documents are more than just a ticket to another country. They are a symbol of the state itself. When a diplomat presents their passport, they aren't just presenting themselves. They're presenting their entire nation. So where did this idea come from? The concept isn't new. For centuries, kings and rulers have sent representatives abroad with letters of credence. These were essentially early diplomatic passports, asking foreign leaders to receive their envoy with respect and grant them safe passage. They were a sign of trust and a vital tool for communication between sovereign powers. This tradition evolved, and as international law began to codify, so did the status of diplomats. The real game changer was the concept of diplomatic immunity. This principle, formalized in the 20th century but practiced for much longer, ensures that diplomats aren't subject to the jurisdiction of the host country's laws, at least not in the same way as a regular citizen. It's a practical necessity. Imagine if a country could arrest another's ambassador just because they disagreed with their policies. International diplomacy would grind to a halt. The diplomatic passport became the physical key that unlocked this immunity. Visually, these passports often stand out. While a standard US passport is blue, a diplomatic one is black. In the UK, a regular passport is also blue, but their diplomatic version is red. This color coding is an immediate visual cue to border officials, signaling that the bearer is on official business and should be treated according to specific international protocols. It's a silent announcement of status and purpose. But what does this quiet privilege actually mean in practice? Well, at an airport, it might mean access to a dedicated diplomatic channel at immigration, bypassing the long queues that the rest of us are used to. It's not about skipping the line for fun, it's about efficiency. Diplomats often travel on tight schedules, moving from one critical meeting to another. Every minute saved at the border is a minute that can be spent on their official duties. There's also the matter of customs. Typically, a diplomat's personal baggage is exempt from inspection under the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. This is to protect the confidentiality of their work. A diplomatic pouch, which can be a bag or even a crate carrying official correspondence and articles, is considered inviolable. It cannot be opened or detained. The passport is the document that verifies the identity of the person who has the right to carry that pouch. It's all part of an intricate system built on trust and reciprocity between nations. Think of it like an understudied ritual. The presentation of the passport, the nod from the border agent, the swift stamp without extensive questioning. It is a dance of protocol that has been performed millions of times at borders all over the world. This isn't about luxury. It's about function. These subtle protections ensure that the machinery of international relations can run smoothly, without interference or intimidation. However, this privilege is not a license to do whatever one pleases. The system relies on integrity. The sending state has a responsibility to ensure its diplomats respect the laws and regulations of the host country. If a diplomat abuses their privilege, the host country can declare them persona non grata, which is a formal request for the sending state to recall them. It's a powerful check and balance within the system. So the diplomatic passport is far more than just a travel document. It's a symbol of sovereignty, a key to immunity, and a tool for facilitating the delicate and essential work of global diplomacy. It represents a world of understated rituals and quiet protections, all designed to allow nations to talk to each other, negotiate, and build relationships. It's a small booklet that carries the weight of a nation on its pages, enabling the envoys and officials who shape our world to move freely and securely as they perform their vital roles. What a fascinating corner of the passport universe. It really shows how a simple document can be adapted for such a specialized and critical purpose. Thanks so much for joining me on this exploration. If you enjoyed this, please hit that like button and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next chapter in the history of identity and travel. Have you ever flipped through your passport and felt a wave of nostalgia? It's not just a travel document, is it? It's a scrapbook, a personal diary, a collection of memories. Each stamp tells a story, each visa sticker a chapter. But have you ever wondered when passports transformed from cold bureaucratic papers into these cherished personal travelogues? Let's journey back in time and uncover how these small booklets became canvases for our greatest adventures. The story starts much earlier than you might think. For centuries, travel documents were purely functional, often just a single sheet of paper stating your name and your king's permission to travel. They were impersonal, easily lost, and frankly quite boring. There was no space for personality, no room for souvenirs. It was all business, no pleasure. The idea of a passport being a personal item was completely unheard of. You used it, you got where you were going, and that was it. It wasn't until the 19th and early 20th centuries, with the rise of leisure travel, that things started to change. Railways and steamships made the world more accessible. Suddenly, people weren't just traveling for diplomacy or trade. They were traveling for discovery, for pleasure, for the sheer joy of seeing something new. This was the era of the Grand Tour, where wealthy young people would travel across Europe to soak up art and culture. Their passports were their tickets to this grand adventure. As more people started to travel, the passport began to evolve. The simple letter transformed into a small booklet, with dedicated pages for visas and entry and exit stamps. This simple design change was revolutionary. For the first time, travelers had a physical, consolidated record of their journeys. Each stamp from a new country wasn't just a bureaucratic mark. It was a badge of honor, proof of an experience, a tangible piece of a memory. People started to collect them like trophies. Travelers began to see the blank pages of their passports as more than just space for official use. They became a canvas. An artist might sketch a quick drawing of the Eiffel Tower on a page. A writer might jot down a line of poetry inspired by the Swiss Alps. A romantic might press a small flower from a lover's garden between the pages. The passport was no longer just a document. It was becoming an extension of the traveler's own identity and experiences. This personalization reached its peak with the rise of souvenir stamps. These weren't official government stamps, but colorful, fun, unofficial stamps you could get at tourist spots. Think of places like Machu Picchu in Peru, Checkpoint Charlie in Berlin, or the southernmost city in the world, Ushuaia in Argentina. These novelty stamps became highly sought-after souvenirs. Getting one was part of the travel ritual, a fun way to commemorate a specific achievement or a visit to a unique landmark. It turned a simple border crossing into a memorable event. These little additions transformed the passport into a private travelogue. Tucked between visa pages, you might find a ticket stub from a concert in Vienna, a small photo booth, picture with a new friend from Tokyo, or a receipt from a cafe in Rome where you had the best coffee of your life. Each item, no matter how small, was a breadcrumb leading back to a precious moment. The passport became a secret scrapbook, a tangible collection of a life lived across borders. This act of personalizing a passport is a beautiful act of rebellion in a way. It's taking a standardized, government-issued document and infusing it with individuality, with art, with emotion. It's a statement that says, my journey is more than just a series of dates and locations. It's a collection of feelings, sights, sounds, and connections. It's our way of claiming ownership over our own travel story. Of course, in today's digital world, this tradition is fading. Biometric passports and electronic gates mean fewer stamps and less human interaction at borders. Many countries have even stopped stamping passports altogether. While this is more efficient, there's a certain romance we're losing. That satisfying thump of the stamp, the thrill of seeing a new ink mark added to your collection, it's a sensory experience that an electronic beep just can't replicate. But the spirit lives on. We might not be sticking ticket stubs in our passports anymore, but we curate our Instagram feeds with travel photos, we write travel blogs, and we create video diaries of our adventures. The medium has changed, but the fundamental human desire to document our journeys, to capture memories, and to share our stories remains as strong as ever. The passport may be returning to a purely functional object, but the personal travelogue it inspired has found new life in the digital world. So, the next time you hold your passport, take a moment to appreciate it not just as a key to the world, but as a potential canvas for your own unique story. And even if you can't get it stamped, remember to document your journey in your own way. Because in the end, it's not the stamps that matter most, but the memories they represent. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the history of the passport. If you enjoyed this story, please give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe for more adventures into the past and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Happy travels! Have you ever really looked at your passport photo? That tiny, serious portrait stuck in a little blue or red book? It might seem like just a bureaucratic formality, but that single image is the culmination of a fascinating history, a story of how we define who we are and where we belong. Today, we're flipping through the pages of history to uncover the story of the passport. Before the 20th century, the world was in many ways more open. You could often cross borders with little more than your word and a ticket. The idea of a universal travel document was still in its infancy. Early forms of passports were more like letters of safe conduct, issued by monarchs to their trusted subjects, essentially saying, hey, this person is with me. Don't give them any trouble. They were for the elite diplomats, merchants, and nobles. For the average person, international travel was rare, and the concept of needing a special booklet to do it would have seemed bizarre. So, what changed? The turning point, like so many things in modern history, was World War I. Suddenly, nations became deeply suspicious of one another. Borders that were once porous became hard lines of defense. Governments needed a reliable way to identify who was coming in and who was going out. Was this person a citizen, an ally, or a potential spy? Security became paramount. In 1920, the League of Nations held a conference specifically on passports, establishing guidelines for a standardized booklet that countries could adopt. This was the birth of the passport as we know it today. But a name and a physical description weren't enough. They needed a foolproof way to link the document to the person holding it. And that brings us to the most personal part of the passport, the photograph. The requirement for a photo turned the passport from a simple letter of introduction into a true document of identity. And this is where things get really interesting from a human perspective. Early passport photos were a far cry from the strict biometric images we have today. In the beginning, the rules were loose. People could be photographed with their families, in their favorite hats, sometimes even with a pet. These early portraits were less about security and more about simple identification. You can look at passport photos from the 1920s and 30s and see entire family dynamics playing out in a single frame. A stern-looking father, a mother holding a restless child. They weren't just identifying themselves. They were capturing a moment in their lives. These portraits are like tiny, unintentional time capsules. As you scroll through the decades, you can see fashion trends change right before your eyes. The slick-back hair and formal suits of the 30s give way to the bouffants and bold patterns of the 60s. The wide lapels and shaggy hair of the 70s evolve into the big shoulders and bigger hair of the 80s. Each photo is a quiet testament to its era, a visual story of how people presented themselves to the world. The lighting, the backdrop, the very expression on a person's face, it all tells a story. In the early days, photographers used studio lighting, creating soft, almost glamorous portraits. People often looked serious, not because they were unhappy, but because holding a smile for the long exposure times of early cameras was difficult. These solemn faces carry a certain dignity, a quiet gravity. They were about to embark on a journey, perhaps to a new life, and this document was their key. Think about the context. For many, getting a passport photo was a significant event. It might be the first time they'd ever had a formal portrait taken. They were documenting themselves for an official purpose, a purpose that involved crossing oceans and continents. For an immigrant leaving their homeland, that photo represented the last image of them in the old country and the first image of the person they were about to become. It's a visual threshold between one life and the next. As the 20th century wore on, the rules tightened. The rise of air travel and increased global mobility meant security had to become more sophisticated. The casual, character-filled portraits began to disappear. No more hats, no more smiling, no more scenic backgrounds. The focus shifted from, does this look like the person? To, can a machine recognize this person? The era of biometric data had begun. Today's passport photo requirements are incredibly specific. A neutral expression, both ears visible, no shadows, a plain white background. The goal is to create an image that is as uniform and machine-readable as possible. While this enhances security, something has been lost. The individuality, the little glimpses of personality that shone through in older photos have been standardized away. We've traded character for code. But even within these strict constraints, a story is still being told. Your passport photo captures you at a specific point in your life. Look at your first one versus your most recent. You see how you've changed, not just in appearance, but in the experiences you've accumulated. That tiny sterile photo is still a marker of time, a node in the timeline of your life's journey. The passport itself is a powerful symbol. It represents not just the freedom to travel, but the very concept of national identity. It's a declaration that you belong to a particular place, a community of people. Yet, at the same time, it's the document that allows you to leave that place, to explore, to connect with the wider world. It's a paradox, a symbol of national belonging that enables global exploration. From handwritten letters for nobles to biometric booklets for the masses, the history of the passport is the history of a shrinking world. And locked within it, in those tiny, evolving portraits, is the visual history of us. They are quiet, gentle stories of hope, ambition, and adventure. captured one solemn face at a time, all waiting to be seen. So next time you open your passport, take a closer look at that photo. You're not just looking at yourself. You're looking at a piece of a much larger human story. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through history. If you found this interesting, please consider giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel for more stories like this. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, travel safely and stay curious. Ever taken a moment to really look at your passport? Not just as a travel document, but as a storybook of your life's adventures. It's more than just a booklet. It's a personal history, and the most poetic part, the stamps. Each one is a tiny, beautiful mark of a moment in time, a silent storyteller of our journeys. Let's talk about the language of these stamps. It's a soft poetry written in ink. Think about it. The deep blue from a European entry, the bold red from an Asian exit, the distinct green of a South American visa. Each color, each shape, each symbol tells a part of your story. It's not just a random mark. It's a carefully designed emblem representing a nation's pride and sovereignty. When that immigration officer firmly presses the stamp onto a fresh page, it's a tangible welcome, a physical record that says, you were here. You crossed this line. The beauty is in the details. The date, precise to the day, anchors your memory to a specific point in time. You can trace your steps, remembering the crisp autumn air when you landed in Paris on October 15th, or the humid heat that greeted you in Bangkok on May 3rd. The name of the port of entry JFK Heathrow Narita isn't just a place. It's the gateway to a new experience, the first chapter of a new adventure. These simple pieces of information map our movements across the globe with a quiet, modest elegance. And it's not just about the entry stamps. The exit stamps are just as meaningful. They are the full stops, the conclusions to a chapter. They signify a departure, a farewell, but also the promise of a return or a new beginning elsewhere. An exit stamp from one country is often immediately followed by an entry stamp into another, creating a seamless narrative of transition. Look at them together, side by side on a page. It's a visual representation of a journey, a border crossed, a world connected. Over time, these stamps create a unique collage. A full passport page is a masterpiece of overlapping inks and intersecting timelines. A faint faded stamp from a decade ago sits next to a fresh, sharp one from last week. It's a testament to your growth, your curiosity, your willingness to explore. You can see the evolution of your travels. Perhaps early on, it was all North American stamps, and then slowly, European and Asian stamps start to appear, painting a picture of an ever-expanding worldview. This visual diary becomes deeply personal. You might remember the stern face of the officer who gave you one stamp and the warm smile of another. You might recall the frantic rush to catch a connecting flight that resulted in a hastily applied, slightly smudged mark. Each imperfection, each variation in pressure and ink adds character. It's a human touch in an increasingly digital world. While some countries are moving towards digital-only entry, there's an undeniable romance to the physical stamp that an e-gate simply can't replicate. Think about the sheer variety of designs. Some are simple and utilitarian, just a box with a date and a location. Others are incredibly ornate, featuring national animals, famous landmarks, or intricate patterns. Japan's stamps, for example, often feature the beautiful chrysanthemum seal. These designs are a form of national branding, a small piece of art that you get to carry with you. They transform a bureaucratic necessity into a collectible memory. The placement of the stamps also tells a story. A neat, orderly officer might fill a page methodically, corner to corner. A more, let's say, artistic one might stamp right in the middle of a blank page, a bold statement of your arrival. Sometimes they overlap, creating a beautiful, chaotic blend of colors and dates, a perfect metaphor for the wonderfully messy nature of travel itself. You can spend hours just flipping through the pages, letting each stamp trigger a flood of memories, the tastes, the sounds, the people you met. This collection of marks is a powerful form of identity. It's a visual CV of your global experiences. It proves not just where you've been, but also that you are a part of a global community of travelers. It's a quiet testament to your courage to step outside your comfort zone and embrace the unknown. Each stamp is a badge of honor, a small reward for navigating new cultures and new landscapes. It's a beautiful, tangible record of a life lived with curiosity. So next time you travel, take a moment to appreciate that simple act of getting your passport stamped. It's more than just a procedure. It's the addition of a new word, a new sentence to the beautiful, soft poetry of your life's journey. It's a map of your memories, written in the universal language of ink and paper. Thanks so much for watching and sharing this little journey with me. What's the favorite or most interesting stamp in your passport? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration. Until next time, travel safely and keep collecting those stories. Have you ever stood in a long line at a consulate or a border crossing, clutching your passport, feeling a bit of anxiety? We often think of these places as rigid, full of rules and red tape, and sure, there's a lot of that. But today, I want to talk about something different. We're going to pull back the curtain on the official world of travel documents and discover the hidden stories of human kindness that make all the difference. These are the quiet tales of clerks, consuls, and volunteers who, with small acts of compassion, bent the rules, extended a helping hand, and smoothed the journeys of countless travelers. This is the story of bureaucratic kindness. Let's travel back to the chaos following World War II. Europe was a continent of displaced people, families torn apart, and individuals desperate to find safety in a new beginning. In the midst of this, a Swedish diplomat named Raoul Wallenberg was stationed in Budapest, Hungary. As the horrors of the Holocaust escalated, Wallenberg didn't just follow his diplomatic duties, he redefined them. He began issuing Schutzpasses, protective passports, to Hungarian Jews. These documents, while looking official with the Swedish royal seal, had no real legal standing. But in a world governed by the appearance of authority, they were a powerful bluff. Wallenberg and his team worked tirelessly, sometimes pulling people directly from death marshes or trains bound for concentration camps, handing them these life-saving pieces of paper. It wasn't just a job, it was a mission of profound humanity. He didn't just stamp documents. He saved lives, one small, audacious act of kindness at a time, proving that sometimes the most powerful tool a bureaucrat has is their own conscience. Another incredible story comes from Chun Sugihara, a Japanese consul in Lithuania during the same period. As thousands of Jewish refugees fled the advancing Nazi forces, they found themselves trapped, unable to travel without transit visas. Country after country shut their doors. But when they arrived at the Japanese consulate, they found Sugihara. Against direct orders from his own government in Tokyo, Sugihara and his wife spent weeks, day and night, handwriting thousands of transit visas. He knew the personal and professional risk was immense. He could be fired, disgraced, or worse. But when faced with the desperation of the people lining up outside his gate, he chose compassion over compliance. He reportedly continued writing visas even from the window of his departing train, throwing them out to the hopeful crowd on the platform. His visas for life saved an estimated 6,000 people. Sugihara's story is a powerful reminder that behind every official stamp and signature, there's a human being with the power to make a choice. He chose to see people, not just policy. These dramatic life-or-death situations are thankfully not what most of us face. But the spirit of bureaucratic kindness continues in quieter, everyday ways. Think about the consular officer who sees a panicked student whose visa paperwork is missing one small, obscure document. Instead of a flat rejection, they take an extra 10 minutes to explain exactly how to get it, where to go, and even offer to hold their application until the end of the day. That small gesture can be the difference between catching a flight to a dream study abroad program and having that dream collapse. It's a moment of grace in a system that can often feel impersonal. Or consider the border guard who encounters a family on vacation. The child is crying, tired from a long journey. The guard, instead of being stern and intimidating, offers the child a sticker or a small smile, asking them about their trip. It's a tiny interaction, lasting maybe 30 seconds, but it completely changes the family's experience. It turns a moment of stress into a moment of welcome. These individuals understand that their job isn't just about enforcing rules. It's about being the first point of contact, the face of a nation. They know that a little bit of empathy goes a long way in making the world feel like a smaller, friendlier place. I've heard stories from travelers who lost their passports abroad, a truly terrifying experience. They described the immense relief when they walked into their embassy and were met not with judgment, but with a calm, reassuring voice. An embassy worker who says, "Don't worry, this happens all the time. Let's get this sorted out together." They guide you through the process, help you contact your family, and make you feel safe when you are at your most vulnerable. These are the unsung heroes of the travel world. They're not just processing emergency travel documents. They're providing a lifeline, a sense of security when everything feels chaotic. Their kindness is a quiet but powerful form of diplomacy. This happens at volunteer-run organizations as well. Think of aid workers at refugee camps. They spend their days navigating impossibly complex paperwork to help families apply for asylum or resettlement. It's a daunting, often heartbreaking task. Yet they do it with patience and dignity. They sit with people, listen to their stories, and help them translate not just their words, but their hopes and histories onto official forms. A volunteer might help an elderly person fill out a form because their hands shake too much to write clearly, or play with a child while their parents have a difficult conversation with an official. These aren't just administrative tasks. They are profound acts of solidarity, bridging the gap between a person in need and the system that can help them. So why do these stories matter? Because they challenge our perception of bureaucracy. We often see it as a faceless, uncaring machine. But these moments of kindness reveal the humanity within the system. They show that rules and regulations are ultimately implemented by people, and people have the capacity for empathy, flexibility, and compassion. These acts don't necessarily change the law, but they change the experience of the law. They transform a cold bureaucratic process into a human interaction. A clerk who stays a few minutes late to process one last passport application for a family with an urgent flight is upholding the spirit, not just the letter, of their job description. They are recognizing the human story behind the paperwork. The passport itself is a symbol of identity and belonging. But it's the people who issue, check, and assist with these documents who breathe life into that symbolism. A simple act of kindness from an official can affirm our sense of belonging, making us feel seen and respected as individuals, not just as a passport number. Conversely, a cold or dismissive interaction can make us feel alienated and powerless. The emotional impact of these small moments is huge. They can define our entire experience of crossing a border or moving to a new country. These quiet anecdotes of clerks, consuls, and volunteers might not make the history books in the same way that treaties and laws do. But they are an essential part of the story of human movement and exploration. They are the footnotes of compassion that make the grand narrative of migration possible. They remind us that even in the most structured and rule-bound environments, there is always room for a human touch. And that human touch, that small, unexpected act of kindness, is often the most important part of the journey. So the next time you're navigating a bureaucratic process, whether it's at an embassy, a border, or even just the DMV, remember these stories. And if you have the chance to be on the other side of the desk, remember the impact a little bit of grace and understanding can have. It can truly change someone's world. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the heart of bureaucracy. If you have your own story of bureaucratic kindness, I would absolutely love to read it in the comments below. Let's share these positive stories. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel for more deep dives into the hidden histories that shape our world. See you next time. Have you ever really looked at your passport? I mean, really looked at it, beyond just checking the expiration date. This little book, this collection of flimsy pages and official-looking stamps, is so much more than just a travel document. It's a key that unlocks the world, a time capsule of our journeys, and in many ways a reflection of who we are. But have you ever wondered where it came from? How did this small booklet become one of the most powerful documents a person can possess? Well, today we're going on a journey through time to uncover the incredible history of the passport. From ancient safe conduct letters for royal messengers to the biometric marvels we carry today, we'll explore how this humble document shaped migration, fueled exploration, and became a cornerstone of our modern identity. It's a story of power, freedom, and the universal human desire to see what lies beyond the horizon. So buckle up and let's get started. The idea of a document granting safe passage isn't new. In fact, its roots go back thousands of years. One of the earliest mentions comes from the Hebrew Bible in the book of Nehemiah, around 450 BC. Nehemiah, an official serving King Artaxerxes of Persia, asks for permission to travel to Judea. The king grants him a letter to the governors beyond the river, requesting safe passage through their lands. This was, in essence, an ancient passport. It wasn't for everyone, of course. These were letters of passage, or safe conducts, reserved for royal envoys, messengers, and high-ranking officials. They were a sign of the bearer's importance, a command from a powerful ruler that said, "This person is with me. Do not harm them. Help them on their way." It was less about who you were, and more about who you worked for. For centuries, this was the norm. Travel for the common person was rare and often dangerous. You didn't need a document to cross a field or visit the next village. The world was both much larger and much smaller back then. Things started to change in medieval Europe. As kingdoms became more defined, so too did the need to control who was coming and going. Kings began issuing documents to their own subjects, but often for the purpose of leaving, not entering. Sometimes they were used to identify citizens abroad, especially merchants who needed to prove their origin. The term passport itself likely comes from this era, from the French passer, to pass, and port, a port or a gate. It was a document that allowed you to pass through the gates of a walled city or a seaport. However, these documents were still sporadic, inconsistent, and far from a standardized system. Different kingdoms had different rules, and a document from one might be worthless in another. It was a messy patchwork, but it was the beginning of an idea, that a piece of paper could define your right to move freely. It was a slow, subtle shift from a pass granted by a king to a document that belonged to the citizen. The real turning point came with the rise of the modern nation-state and, ironically, with the invention of the railway in the 19th century. Suddenly mass travel was possible. People could cross multiple borders in a single day. The old, slow system of checks and letters couldn't keep up. For a brief golden period in the mid to late 19th century, international travel, especially in Europe, became incredibly easy. Passport requirements were relaxed or even abolished in many countries. You could hop on a train in Paris and ride it all the way to St. Petersburg with minimal fuss. It was an age of unprecedented mobility. People were migrating for work, for opportunity, and for adventure like never before. But this era of open borders was fragile, and it wouldn't last. The world was on the brink of a conflict that would change everything, and with it the nature of travel and identity forever. World War I slammed the door shut on the age of easy travel. As nations went to war, borders that were once fluid became rigid lines of defense. Every foreigner was a potential spy, every traveler a potential threat. Controlling borders became a matter of national security. Countries hastily reintroduced and strengthened passport and visa systems, not just to track their own citizens, but to scrutinize every single person trying to enter. This is where the modern passport truly begins to take shape. It was no longer just a letter of introduction. It was a tool of surveillance and control. The document began to include more personal information. A photograph, a physical description, a signature. The passport became a mandatory file on every international traveler, a way for the state to verify and track its people. The freedom of movement that had been celebrated just a few years earlier was now a privilege, granted only to those who could prove their identity and loyalty to the state's satisfaction. After the war, the world was left with a patchwork of strict, incompatible passport regulations. International travel was a bureaucratic nightmare. Recognizing the chaos, the newly formed League of Nations held a conference in Paris in 1920, the Paris Conference on Passports and Customs Formalities and Through Tickets. This was a landmark event. For the first time, nations came together to try and standardize the passport. They agreed on a basic format, a booklet of 32 pages written in French, the diplomatic language of the time and the language of the issuing country. They recommended features that we now take for granted, like the holder's name, age, and a photograph. While not all recommendations were adopted immediately, this conference laid the blueprint for the international passport system we know today. It was a crucial step towards making global travel manageable again, creating a document that could be understood and trusted across borders, turning a symbol of wartime suspicion back into a tool for peaceful exploration. The decades following World War II saw an explosion in air travel. The jet age made the world smaller than ever before. Journeys that once took weeks by sea now took mere hours by plane. Tourism became a massive global industry, and migration patterns shifted and accelerated. The passport was essential to all of it. It became the single most important document for anyone wanting to see the world. As more and more people traveled, passport design continued to evolve. Security became paramount. To combat forgery, countries began adding more sophisticated features, watermarks, special inks, and intricate designs. In 1980, the International Civil Aviation Organization, or ICAO, took the next big step, establishing global standards for machine-readable passports. Those 2 lines of cryptic text at the bottom of your photo page, that's the machine-readable zone. It allowed for faster, automated border crossings and created a universal standard that made passports interoperable worldwide. And that brings us to the passport of today, the e-passport, or biometric passport. That little symbol on the cover of your passport, the one that looks like a camera, indicates there's a small microchip embedded inside. This chip stores the same information that's printed on the photo page, including your name, date of birth, and a digital copy of your photograph. In many countries, it also stores biometric data, like a scan of your fingerprints or iris. This technology makes passports incredibly difficult to forge and allows for highly secure and efficient identity verification at automated border control gates. From a handwritten letter from a king to a smart chip holding our unique biological data, the passport has undergone a remarkable transformation. It reflects our ever-changing world, our technological advancements, our security concerns, and our enduring desire to connect with people and places far from home. But let's take a step back from the history and the technology for a moment. Think about your own passport, the real one sitting in your drawer. It's probably a bit worn around the edges. The cover might be faded, the corners softened from being tucked into pockets and bags. Open it up. Each stamp is a story. That faded one from a weekend trip years ago, the crisp new one from your most recent adventure. The visas, with their formal text and official photos, represent weeks or months of planning and anticipation. There are the cramped notations from border guards, scribbled in languages you may not even understand. This little book is a silent witness to your journeys. It's kept a log of your life, one trip at a time. It's been with you through the excitement of departure, the fatigue of a long-haul flight, and the joy of arriving somewhere new. This document is more than just paper and ink. It's a physical record of your personal history, a tangible piece of your identity stitched together through travel. It tells the story of who you were and who you are becoming. Each journey changes us, broadens our perspective, and adds a new layer to our understanding of the world and ourselves. The passport is the keeper of those transformations. It's a quiet testament to our courage, our curiosity, and our place in a global community. So next time you hold your passport, take a moment. It's not just a key to other countries. It's a key to your own past and a promise of future adventures yet to come. It's your life held between 2 covers. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the history of the passport. If you found this interesting, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more stories about the fascinating objects that shape our world. And I'd love to hear from you. What's the most memorable stamp in your passport? Let me know in the comments below. Until next video, travel safely and stay curious. This is the end of this video.